Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Curiosity Cove. My name's Veda.
And this is your trusty Captain speaking. And today we'll be talking about scary
To
stories,
tell in the
aka
dark.
creepypastas. True.
Oh, but before we get to that, how are you?
I was just telling Veda before we went live. I'm having like the worst day ever. Dude,
No.
like everything from getting up out of bed to coming home from work, I felt like every minor inconvenience inconvenienced me more than
No.
like it typically would. Cause like typically I'm like, okay, that sucked, whatever, push through it. But it happened so much today, and work was such a drag. Like, not in a way that like it took forever because like I got out early today, which is W. But it was just that there was so much that was wrong, not in like a super negative way where like bad stuff happened, but
Right.
like nothing went right. And
No.
so
I
I'm
hate
so
those days.
mad.
You know what? I actually would take a bad day over like an inconvenient day
I
sometimes.
would too.
Just because, like,
I
at
would
least
too.
in a bad day, at the end of it, I can be like, fuck everything. Everything's wrong. The world's out to get me. But after an inconvenient day, you're just like, this shit sucked.
That's how I felt. Like I
Yeah.
literally was like on my way home, like I normally put on some tunes and I like
Mm-hmm.
drive and like take the longer way so I can like clear my head and shit. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just so sad. Like I
Yep.
felt a tear roll down my face
Oh,
and I was like,
no. You
bro.
want to hear, so this is very trivial compared to what you are feeling, but yesterday I finally broke into my gelato that I've had in the freezer and it was really good and I took like a few bites and then I left it out overnight. It really sucks because it's only like a pint and it was like $9
And it's all
and it's
melted.
all gone.
No.
Yeah, it felt really bad. So that was
Dude.
the start of my day, was finding that. And then I went to work and work just wasn't fun. And then on the way home, I did something I'm about to admit a really big guilty pleasure here.
Hmm.
Sometimes in the car, I put on a YouTube playlist of karaoke's and I just karaoke all the way home.
Oh, I was thinking like this was like a hot take instead of like a
No.
genuine like guilty
No, it's a
pleasure.
guilty
Bitch, I do
pleasure.
that too. I put my musical playlist
Yeah,
on.
no, no, I'm talking full karaoke. No vocals in it whatsoever. I am the singer. I'm the lead singer. All the
That's
way home.
still just as fun, I would
Yeah,
say.
it is. It's actually, it feels really, I mean, it depends, because if you don't like the sound of your own voice like I do, you blast the karaoke, so then you can't really hear yourself over it. But
Yeah.
you feel like you're doing really well. So yeah,
I
I
love that shit.
karaokeed all the way home thinking that would make me feel better. It didn't.
Oh.
Um, but I think tomorrow will be a lot better for me personally, just because like I don't know, Wednesday used to be the day I hated the most because I was like, ugh, you're like equally far from last weekend and the upcoming weekend, and it's
Hmm.
gross and it's doo doo caca and I hate it. Now I'm kind of like, we're halfway through the week. I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about anything.
I don't dread Fridays now because like that's my quote unquote start of the work week
Hmm.
after my weekend, but it definitely changes it up where I'm like hearing from other people, oh my God, I can't believe tomorrow's Friday. It's my like day before my weekend. I'm so excited. And I'm like, dude, I'm about to work the next five. Fuck.
Yeah.
Like it really blows working like through the weekend because then so
Yeah.
many people have it off. And I'm like, oh, I want to come hang. I want to do
Yeah,
stuff.
I know that used to be like Lexi's big thing when she worked Thursday Fridays, because she was like, "Oh, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
lucky, people get Fridays off and I can do something." But like everyone I know is off on the weekend. And so we would always push her to just demand the weekends off, but I know that situation all too well within the
Yeah.
workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So it took her a long, long time too. I just like I feel so bad for you guys not having like the traditional work week. Like,
Yeah, it really blows.
yeah, I can admit, just because so many people around our age do have the traditional work week.
Yeah, I still like though at least my 2 days off are together because
Mm-hmm.
back in the day before they switched over, I had I think Mondays and Thursdays, so it broke up like 2 and 3, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, oh, well,
Because then it
I'd
feels
rather
like you
just take a
never actually,
weekend.
yeah, it's like you never actually get a break. You get like a single day. And I remember that shit when I worked at the gas station, and then when I worked at my little fucking shitty chicken shack. It wasn't shitty, it was the best chicken I ever had. But the chicken the chicken shack that I worked at downtown, both of those, it would be like I went to school Monday through Wednesday, and then I
Hmm.
worked Thursday and Saturday. So it was like I had Friday off and I had Sunday off. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I should just be able to work Thursday, Friday, have my weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I fucked it up by getting a second job, anyways. And I worked or went to school every single day of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah, college is rough.
Adulting's hard.
I actually think it's a little easier than college, but I also understand that I did the absolute most in college by
Yeah.
working two jobs, going to school, having a social life, and driving home on the weekends. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how I survived that. And it's crazy too, because it's like, it's not even like I drank my way through it. I like literally had to be sober most of the time because I was working one of my three
I was
jobs
about
or
to
at
say
school.
the jobs, yeah.
hmm But
Damn.
yeah, sometimes I like look back at it and I think about my schedule because I would like Monday, I would wake up, I had class at 9, then I worked my second shift job, which was at like a fucking shitty kid's place. And then Tuesday, repeat. And then Wednesday, I did dog walking in the afternoon after school. And then I had another class at night. And then Thursday, I worked the chicken shack in the morning, dog walking at night. And then Friday, I had the day off technically. So then I took a full time like shift for dog walking. And
Hmm.
then Saturday, I had my music job and my chicken shack. And then Sunday, I would do my homework in the morning and then walk dogs in the afternoon.
Jesus
And then
fucking
I would
Christ.
still go to every party I could find on Thursday, Friday nights.
Jesus
So I don't know
Christ.
how I did it, man.
Oh, 20s, bro.
I know. And somehow I dated during that time. Like, where did I even find the time to do that?
I don't even know how you found time to do the shit you just
I
listed.
know. Well, so to be fair, I ran off of like cigarettes and energy drinks. So
Yeah,
I
but even
mean,
so.
I think I slept an average for the whole year of 2015 and half of 2016. I was getting like steady 6 to 8 hours a night. Halfway through 2016 all the way up to like the fall of 2017, I think I averaged about 3 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was about
that
it.
sounds about right
Yep, you gotta
with what you just
sacrifice.
described.
But there would be times where I would fall asleep on like a Friday and I would call off like work the next day because I just didn't feel like I could do it. And I would sleep from like Friday night all the way until like Sunday morning.
Jesus Christ. Like, take the whole Saturday to, like, recoup.
Yeah, basically. And then I would wake up and I would think it was 8 a.m. on Saturday, but it was actually 8 a.m. on Sunday.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
Remember, that's why I told you that I have my phone in military time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that when you decided to switch it over, or was
Yep.
it already switched beforehand?
No, that was when I decided to switch it over, is when I kept waking up on Sunday morning thinking it was Saturday, going throughout my day, and then work would call me and be like, "Where are you?" And I'd be like, "What do you mean? And it's Saturday." And they'd be like, "It's Sunday." And I'd be like, "Fuck me, I'm on my way."
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Yep, happened way
Well,
too often for my liking.
and that's where the lore drop happened
And
of why
that's
Veda's phone is on
isn't
military
yep,
time.
that is why I do military time.
Hmm.
But moving on to our main topic, because we could yap forever about
True.
nothing. We have creepypastas for you guys today. We picked
Yes.
a couple of our favorites. So
Yes.
I'm actually gonna start this time around. I feel like usually it's you going first, so this is like, and so
Yeah.
it's a little strange, but not unwanted.
We were
Um,
trying to like gauge who to do what when because I have a short one and then a really long one and then she said she had a really long one and then
and
a
then a
semi-long
long-ish
one.
one, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but mine are two. One of them I feel like is a classic, but it's like a sleeper. Like people either knew it
Know
really,
it or
really
you don't?
well, or they did not know it at all. And the other one is like one of the most famous creepypastas ever.
Interesting.
So we're
I
starting with
wonder
the
if I know
sleeper
it.
agent. And let me get this. I have photos for you guys. So we're
Mm.
gonna flip this over. So this one is called Ted the Caver, and I'll pull this over so you guys can see it for a second. Oh, let me get rid of my school stuff. Hold on. So, this is the website that was created for it because it is like based off of an entire website, and it's just called the Page of Ted, and it's like it was just basically like a website that popped up on Reddit out of nowhere, and everyone was like, "You guys got to read this," and it's this dude's blog from back in the 2000s. Um, so the photos will go along with it. And as I get to the captions that he left, I'll let you guys know and then I'll show you the slide. Ba-ba-ba-bum.
I'm
Okay.
excited. I don't know if I know this one off rip. Like just by
It
the
is
name.
it is very exciting. Um so the first post we have is from March 23rd of 2001 and it is a letter from Ted. It says, "Due to the overwhelming number of requests I have received to tell about my discoveries and bizarre experiences in a cave not far from my home, I've created this web page to credit all of my discoveries. I will outline the events that happened to me during the past few months, beginning with my journey into a familiar cave in December of 2000 and ending, well, it hasn't actually ended yet. I will use my caving journal as the text to tell about my recent experience. I will give them to you as I experience them in chronological order. I have included photographs that were taken during many of my trips into the cave. I have also created a few illustrations to help the reader get a better idea of what things looked like in the cave. All the photos were taken by me or one of the few people I went into the cave with. I want to point out a few things before I tell about the events. One, most of the pictures were taken on a Kodak disposable type camera. I took a better camera into the cave on one or two of the trips. Pictures on the site are all original photos and have not been messed with or enhanced, other than where we noted. As a rule, I get my pictures put onto disk at the time of developing so I can scan them in later. This ensures the best digital quality. Two, I will not reveal the names of the people involved in this experience. If you know me well enough, you probably know them already. Three, I will not reveal the location to anyone under any reason, so please don't ask. I refuse to be held accountable for anyone's life but my own. I will refer to the cave as Mystery Cave, but that is not the real name. If you think these events sound far-fetched, I agree. I would come to the same conclusion had I not experienced them myself. I will try to finish the site as soon as possible. Check the date on the main page to see when I've made updates. To protect myself from people who might want to copy this site, I have included the following. All text on the following pages are my own words and copyright 2001. From Ted.
I'm dead.
Our next entry is called The Discovery, and at the top there is a little caveat. So I'm going to do this in a weird way. I'm gonna give you guys a pause in between so that I can tell you when it's he's got two texts that he does. He does a blue text and a gray text. The gray text is ripped out of his caving journal. The blue text is like an editor's note, basically. But it is back and forth, back and forth. So I'll let you know if it is confusing as to when it is blue text, like if it doesn't make sense because it's an editor's note, I'll let you know. But otherwise, I'm just going to rip through it as much as I can because it's long. Um,
It's a chunk.
it is a chunk. So this is dated Caving Journal 12/30/2000. This was the first day that they started their journey in the cave. And it says, B and I decided to get in one more caving trip before the new year. So we set our sights on Mystery Cave. Not a spectacular cave, but since neither of us had been caving in a while, it would be nice to go to any cave at all. There was a bit of an excitement to this trip. There was a small passage in the lower portion of the cage that I wanted to check and see if it was possible to get past it. It had a small opening, but lots of air blowing out of it. Even though it's way too small to climb through, I had never even checked out what was going on inside the passage. We got our gear loaded up and hit the road by 3 p.m. We got to the cave in great time, since B likes to drive fast. We anchored from the usual tree and began to rappel into the cave. I went down first and got my gear together while B came down. This is an editor's note. I will refer to B many times. We've been caving together for many months now. He was injured in a caving accident a few years ago and was told he would never walk again. Through hard work and perseverance, he not only walks but can get around very well in caves. The trickier parts of a cave might slow him down a bit, but he can make it. He patiently works on an obstacle until he gets past it. As for the reference to the small opening in the cave, there is a saying among cavers: if it blows, it goes, meaning if a passage has good airflow, it's probably worth investigating. Back to the gray text.
Crazy.
I know.
Comment.
If anybody here has not been cave splunking, it is not for the faint of heart. It is very I go cave splunking with my family sometimes. Like every once in a while we'll go to Mammoth Cave in Kentucky and we'll do like the splunking stuff. It is, I mean, holes that look like they are the size of your arm people will fit through, and watching it is terrifying. And then like there will be these passageways that like get wide and narrow, so you kind of just have to trust the splunking guide when he says you can make it through. There's a part in Mammoth Cave called Fat Man's Misery, and I mean, they're not wrong, because because as somebody who is not stick thin, it even scared me. Like I was like, going through it, it's like it gets more narrow at your legs than anywhere else. So if you are short and have wide hips, it is a nightmare because you just feel like the walls are closing in on you. So trying to fit through something super, super small, the way that you're going to see these photos, it already scares me. Okay, but we are back to gray text now, and it says, after we explored the usual passages, we climbed down to check out the hole. The hole is located deep in the cave near the lowest part of the cave. It is on the side of a wall and about 3 feet from the floor. To look inside the hole, I had to kneel down and duck under the overhang of a rock. And so this is the hole. It is pretty short or pretty small. I don't think that I would ever have a thought about going in that. But he says, I used my backup anti-mag light and held it inside the hole to see what I could see. I put my glove in the hole for size reference for the photo, but I was excited what I saw when I took the glove out and peered in. The wall around the hole was about 3 to 5 inches thick. It led into a tight passage. The passage opened up a bit, and inside the hole, it continued back about 10 to 12 feet in a small crawl space. After that, it seemed to really open up, although how much we couldn't tell, but this was a virgin passage, aka a passage that no one had been through since there was no way for them to get through it in the first place. To even get to crawl in the space would have to enlarge the opening. Currently, it's about the size of my fist. Once we get past the opening, we would have a tight crawl back to where it opened up. It would take some work, but we thought we could do it. We sat down for a few minutes to rest and to contemplate our plan of attack. While we sat there in the darkness, we could hear the wind howling from the other side of the passage. It was a low, eerie noise. We could also hear a rumble from time to time. Not a big deal, though. This cave is in the vicinity of the highway, and it has heavy trucks that drive on it. We figured the rumble was the effect on the trucks resonating through the rocks. We determined that our best plan would be to haul a cordless drill down the cave to drill into the rock. Then we could take a bullpen and a small sledgehammer and break up the rock. It seemed pretty straightforward. We would widen the hole enough to squeeze in and see what was on the other side. The efforts to haul the equipment down to the hole would be the worst part of it, but we hoped it would be worth it. I named the passage Floyd's Tomb after Floyd Collins. It seemed to look like a tight spot where Floyd spent his last miserable days on life. For those of you
I know this now.
I was going to say, for those of you who don't know who Floyd Collins is, he was like this like infamous guy who got stuck in the sand cave in Kentucky. I think he
Hmm.
was like, oh, I think it was like a 17-day thing that he was like stuck inside this cave or whatever. But he's very famous for essentially,
Dying.
yeah, and and the story of him is so sad because it's like his last words were, you're too slow," because they couldn't get to him fast enough. And it's like very, very sad. Um,
There's a musical about him though, if you wanted to go watch it though.
really?
Jeremy Jordan does the main singer. Yeah.
Oh my God. A whole musical about him being
Yeah,
stuck in the
it's so good.
Wait, I might have to look into that.
I
Um,
love it. They did the performance at the Emmys this year and it was so good.
wait, okay, yeah, I might have to actually look into that because that sounds sick. Okay, so then here is one of the illustrations. He said, click here to see a rough drawing of the passage. And that's the rough drawing. Um,
Is that the glove?
he
Yeah.
was not lying. But yeah, as you can see, this is how it looked at the very beginning, from their perspective. So he mentioned that there's that like overhang, so it gets a little narrow. Like it's a, he goes on to say that it's a very rough like work area because the walls on the sides are also thin, but there's that tiny, tiny entrance, and then there's a wider area that they think they can fit through, and then about 20 feet back, they don't know what it is, but it looks like it opens up. Ba-ba-bum. And then
But that
after
was still just
this,
a guess, right?
huh?
That's still just like a guess, just from looking through that little
Yes,
peephole. They're like,
this
there
is
might be.
basically what they assume it's like based off of what they can see through in that hole. Um,
Hmm.
So
Okay.
then he goes on to say, we gathered our gear and headed to the surface. Normally, I couldn't care less if I ever came back to this cave. There's nothing special about it. But now I was psyched about getting back and getting through. We hadn't even left the cave, and we were planning our return trip. The rest of the journal entry, this is a blue note. The rest of the journal entry talked about the climb out of the cave, our dinner, and our road trip back home. Nothing too important. Our next post is from January 27th and 28th, 2001. So this is again straight from his journal. I don't actually know when it was like noted to be um updated. I think at the time it was like uh maybe like March or April of 20 or 2001 when he was writing these. So he's going back in time to the beginning of the year when they actually explored it, but like he's writing them in I think March, cuz that first page I think said like March 23rd is when he opened up the site. um
Yeah.
yeah, so this is a cave journal entry from January 27th, 2001. It says, B and I were both excited to get into the cave and get to work. I figured about 4 hours of work we could be in and see what was on the other side. We had arranged to borrow a DeWalt cordless drill to bring with us. We also had masonry bits to drill with, sledgehammers to break up the rock, bullpins to insert into the drill holes, and a few other tools that we ended up not using. Getting the tools down to the worksite proved to be a challenge. One of us would climb down the rope and stop on a ledge or a good resting place, then the other person would lower the tools. We kept repeating this routine until we got to the bottom of the cave. Then we had to drag the tools all the way to the hole. It took about an hour to finally get to work, but B took his first turn at the hole. After an hour of exhausting work, we could tell that we were not going to get through in one session. We kept trading off and worked ourselves into a sweat. One of us would take a break or get some food and water while the other one went to work. So the routine went like this. To begin work, we had to get down on our knees to do our best to avoid our heads smacking against the ceiling. Working in this awkward position, we would drill into the wall around to create a little hole. That was difficult. We really had to push the drill, and it was still slow progress. Then we inserted the bullpen into the hole and hammered on it until the rock broke up. Then we would repeat the process. To give you an idea of how slow it went, the typical size of rock that would break off was about the size of a fingernail. If we broke off a large piece that was about a third the size of my palm, that was a cause for celebration. From time to time, for variety, we would just wail on a cold chisel with a 5-pound sledgehammer. It was slow progress. The problem with the sledge was that we couldn't get a good swing because of the tight quarters. After a couple hours of hard work, we realized our limiting factor was going to be the battery. It was about then that our first battery died, and we had a second one, so we swapped them out. The second battery lasted a little longer because we had sledgehammered and chiseled a little more often and a little longer each time. Finally, about 3 more hours of drudgery and the second battery died. We called it a night. We could tell that we had done some work in the cave, but it was not much for the first time since we got in the cave, and we sat back as we both took a break. It was nice to check out the results of our hard work, and then we noticed the howling again. It seemed a little louder than last time than we were there, but we figured the wind was just blowing a little stronger outside. What we could not figure out was the rumbling. It too seemed to be louder and more frequent. This time we could not attribute the noise to trucks. The road the trucks drive on was not very busy to begin with. At the time of night, it should be dead. Yet the rumbling continued. It seemed to be coming from deep within the passage. B said he would ask some veteran cavers what could be causing the noise. We didn't spend a long time admiring our work. We still had to haul our gear up and out of the cave. Actually, we left some of it in the cave. It was still difficult work. We made it worse. What made it worse was we were both exhausted. Our original plan was to be done with this cave and hit a couple of other caves in the area the next day. Instead, we decided to crash at a nearby motel, charge up the drill batteries, and get back to the mystery cave. Click to see a photo of the grand opening of our first trip. So, to give you some reference, let's go back to this one. This shit is not a lot of progress. Like, that looks like he just kind of just took the glove out. You know what I mean? Like,
It does.
it does not look like they did much at all. So the next part of this is called On Caving, and it doesn't have a date. I believe it was just maybe some information that was adjacently thrown in with the previous post. It says, before I continue with the next journal entry, I thought it might be helpful to the reader to explain a little bit about caving and about the atmosphere in the cave. As I reread and think about my description of the cave, I notice much of the language I use in my caving journal and the descriptions, or lack thereof, assume that the reader has a knowledge of caving and what it is like to be inside a cave. In other words, I write my journals for me. I will take the time to give a little more detailed explanation of the cave. I will tell about what it was like when we worked on the cave, and I will summarize our feelings up until this point. The cave was quote-unquote discovered several decades ago when construction in the area unearthed its entrance. From that time to the present, and time to time in between, it has been visited by mostly locals in the area and avid cavers in the region. Beer cans can be found intermittently in the cave, mostly in the upper half. When the cave was first entered, it was probably beautiful. Dust, graffiti, vandals, pigeons, and regular use have diminished its appeal. There are still places in the cave where small formations remain undisturbed as a reminder of what the cave used to look like. To enter the cave, one must have a good length of rope. In order to rappel down into the rock, a nearby tree serves as a good anchor point. Once the rope is tied to the tree about 20 feet away from a small cliff, it can be tossed over the edge of the cliff to a small ledge about 15 feet below. Cavers can then descend the short distance to the cave. Once inside, the cave artificial light must be used. My light source of choice is a battery-operated helmet-mounted light known as a tag light. Safe caving calls for two sources of backup lighting. For my backup lighting, I have a mini mag light mounted to my helmet and another helmet-mounted light in my pack, which I always carry with me. I also have glow sticks that I carry with me. These are not considered good sources of backup light by some, but they are good to use for taking lunch breaks, and they could be used to get out of a cave if other sources fail. After a short climb over the ledge of rocks, the cave comes into a large pit. The same rope is used to reach the bottom of the pit. The drop is only 50 feet or so, but it is not free hanging. In other words, you can't You can't slide straight down the rope, which is preferable. You have to snake your way around sharp rocks as you descend. The ascent is made more difficult for the same reason. The pit varies in diameter from about 10 feet to 3 or 4 in a few places, which is a terrifying thought. Okay, humans are about 2 feet wide. So imagine having to rappel through a 3-foot wide circle.
No, thank
No,
you.
I don't. I'm good.
Like, I don't have claustrophobia or anything, but like, I might there.
Yeah, that's. I feel like even me who doesn't have claustrophobia, when I'm caving, I get it. I understand. There's like, there's two things that I can't do. If my shoulders feel like they're getting stuck, I freak out. And if I have to pull myself through something, I freak out. Just because that it doesn't feel natural. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
want to be able to like naturally fit through the things I'm walking through or crawling through. And if I
Yeah.
can't, it freaks me out a little bit. Um so he goes on to say, the walls are lined with a sharp white rock called popcorn. Let me correct that. It used to be white, but is now covered with dust and dirt that was kicked down from above by years of caving. The popcorn makes it painful to brush against the side of the pit. My choice of clothing is Levi's, t-shirt, gloves, and knee pads. I usually leave the cave with a few scrapes, but at least I'm comfortable while I climb around inside. The temperature is stable year round. It feels cool in the summer and warm in the winter. We have gone on freezing days, and 10 feet into the cave is warm enough that coats are not needed. It's a good temperature to work in, is that's what we've learned. For this size drop, I usually use a figure 8 descending device. For the climb up, I attach myself to a rope using a what's called a Petzl ascender, but I climb up on my own without using the device. It is merely there as a safety attachment in case I slip. Other cavers have their own methods of getting down and up. At the bottom of the drop, cavers get to do some crawling for a while. There's a small room about 6 by 6 feet. At the bottom, it gives the caver a spot to leave his harness and ascending gear. Since there is no more steep drops, the harness is not needed and will only get in the way. Once the caver gets down to the 6 by 6 room, he can take a break under the ledge while the rest of the party comes down. Then he must drop to his knees, negotiate a 10-foot long passage that is only a few feet high, and this is where the knee pads come in handy. The floor is covered with soft dirt, intermingled with bits of broken rock from above. The thin layer of dirt does nothing to soften the blow. As a reward, at the end of the crawl, he gets to drop to his belly and scoot under a tight squeeze. Not really tight, just something low enough to make the caver scoot along the dirt. Once the caver gets on the other side of the squeeze, the cave opens up enough to stand. For the rest of the cave, the caver can stand or at least stoop. This cave splits off into two. The cave splits off into two. Okay, I think it's just meant to say it's several. It says two several passages, but I'm assuming it's several. Two routes wind along the rocks and crevices to come to abrupt ends. The other two lead to small pools of water. Each route is fun to explore. They all lead on for about 100 feet or so in a gradual downward slope. Most of the time, the caver can walk upright in the passages. Other times, they will have to climb over large boulders or occasionally crawl on hands and knees. Water is common. What Oh. I've been told that one of the local residents was one of the first people in the cave and that his cousin dove into the pools using scuba gear. He said the cave continued down for a couple 100 feet underwater. What they were hoping for, and what happens frequently, is that the passage comes up somewhere else with virgin cave passages to explore. Unfortunately, I don't possess the knowledge to give more detail about the types of rocks in the cave. When we were drilling, this would have been some parts, or there would have been some parts that were easier to work with the drill than others, and there were different colors of rock. Refer to the photos taken in the cave, but that's the best I can do to describe the makeup of the cave. Truthfully, if I had known the type of rock, it might have been a little easier to make our hole a little bigger. At the point that the cave splits into 4 routes, 2 passages that are dead end lead to the immediate left of the caver. Straight ahead and to the right are the passages that lead to pools of water. The entrance of the passage to the right is the largest of the 4. The arched opening is nearly 10 feet in the air. The rest of them vary in different heights, but are a little more uncomfortable to go through, even for experienced cavers in some places. When I go with B, I carry the end of the rope that we used to get down to this point. Um, I usually need to tie another short length of rope to make sure that we can reach the bottom, because there is a pit at the end of one of them. The crawl lasts a few feet beyond the bottom of the slide that naturally was formed there. Over the next 10 to 12 feet, the caver slowly begins to regain the standing position. This is in one of the side entrances to the left. Oh, that are dead ends. After walking a few feet and climbing down a short drop off, caver arrives at a small level area which has a passage leading down immediately to the left. Passage ends about 75 feet later. As has been my tradition the last years I've been caving, the party reaches a point in the cave, usually at the deepest part of the cave, and all lights are extinguished. Complete blackness fills the eyes. For a moment, the individual caver strains their eye muscles, focusing in and out with the expectations of catching a crumb of light somewhere. After several futile moments, the caver turns his head at a sound, perhaps another caver, only to have other senses return and then heighten. The sounds, smells, and feelings have been overlooked at this point, come racing into the caver in perfect detail. The depth and darkness recognized at this time is something. It is rarely experienced outside a cave. Many first-time cavers erroneously declare that they have to hold their hand within 2 to 3 inches of their face before they can see it. The truth is the human eye is incapable of seeing an absence of light. If they did not hear something coming towards them, they would not feel it before they saw it. Complete and total darkness. This exercise is a great way to remind people to take backup lighting. That is really true. When I go caving, there always is a moment where we turn off all the lights, and like it is, I mean, you don't know darkness until you've done that, because it is like I can't see my hand even an inch in front of my, I'll touch my nose and I still can't see my hand.
No, that would stress me out, bro.
It is, if you're afraid of the dark, man, caves, never go into them. It's just too much.
Yeah.
Um So yeah, he just goes on to basically, the rest of this is basically just describing the way that the passages look and like what caving is. He rambles for quite a while, so I'm just gonna skip past the rest of that. He basically talks about splunking and how splunking is when you go through things where it's basically like you look at it and you go, hey, I think I can get through that. And then he goes forward to go back to talking about processing the the hole in the rock and with the drill and everything. So I'm going to skip to that part. So he said, as we proceeded to work in the cave and developed a system pretty early, and a little changed in succeeding trips. The first time in the cave, B took first shift at clipping away at the opening. About a half hour, he needed a break or so, so I took over. He told me that worked best, and I continued doing the same. We would try new things from time to time, use new muscles, but we both usually stuck around the same method. We would use masonry bits and press on the drill as hard as we could to drill out a small hole. Safety glasses were worn for dust, along with masks. Then we would insert a bullpen and hammer it into the rock to break out small chunks of the cave. Then we would press the drill into another hole, rinse, repeat. Occasionally the drill would hit a soft spot in the rock that step would be shortened. We would work until we became too tired, and then B and I would trade. While one of us was working, the other would remain in darkness and either eat or drink or just lay down on the cave floor padded by rope bags. After just a few rotations, we were tired enough to catch a nap while taking our break. The only light we used was the helmet light on the head of the worker. Since it was pointing towards the hole, the resting person was left mostly in the dark. This was a welcome benefit since the resting person was usually, well, resting. The rest break was also a chance to cool down a bit, which didn't take long in the cooler temperature of the cave. Fortunately, the temperature of the cave allowed us to work pretty hard and not overheat too much. I remember that I frequently looked at the hole and thought, hey, it's big enough, I think I can squeeze through, only to be disappointed by the attempt. However, even after the first attempt and failure, I knew if we keep working on the hole, we could get through. This despite the fact I knew that it would take many more hours of hard work. It actually became an obsession with me. I tried to get out of the cave and work as much out to the cave and work as often as I could. I hoped that the passage led to a larger undiscovered cave that we would be the first ones to enter. I guess the explorer in me wanted to find a new frontier there in the cave. Since B is such an avid caver, he was motivated by the same desire. What we did find was not at all what we expected. So then the next one comes from February 10th of 2001. So it'd be 2 weeks later. It says if I had waited 5 seconds, scarcely 2 weeks had gone by, and we already were on our way back to work in the cave. We admit we had become obsessed. The idea of getting through the passage, the sign, that may be a sign of how exciting our lives really were. It's not that we think there's going to be something great beyond the passage. We just like the idea of being the first humans on the face of the planet to step foot in a part of the cave. We got a late start and drove part of the way in the dark. When I tell people I go caving at night, they wonder why. They don't stop to think that it's always night once you're inside the cave. All the way out to Mystery Cave, we talked about the new idea to speed up our work. B also told me he had some caver friends that came up with an explanation about the rumbling noise we keep hearing. They thought it might be the sound of water deep within the cave, possibly a waterfall. They couldn't really explain why the noise seemed to come and go. To me, it's just one more reason to get through so we can solve that mystery. This trip, we took Bee's dog Whip. She's a Jack Russell Terrier. I was not concerned about taking the dog into the cave. We've taken her before. She answers the calls of nature before we go in, and then waits until we get out again. And she's also well behaved in the cave. We simply had to lower her via a custom-made harness until she reached the bottom of the main drop. She then negotiated the rest on her own. She loves to explore, but won't go out of our sight. She doesn't have a light attached to her, so she has to wait for us. Another reason I don't mind bringing Whip along is because we planned about putting her into the small hole to see how far down the passage she would go. That might give us an idea of what is on the other side. We knew that if there were a drop-off we couldn't see, she would turn around and come right back out. We thought we might have to do some work on the hole before even the dog could get through. Click to see a picture of Whip. This dog is cute. Look at her. She's a caver.
Oh my gosh. What a little
She's
babe.
cave splunking.
She's the scout.
Yes, correct. Despite working in the dark on that night, we were able to rig up and get down pretty quickly. We didn't take as many tools this time, plus we left some in the hole so we wouldn't have to haul them back down again. I did manage to get 2 more batteries for the drill for a total of 4. Also a few more masonry drill bits. Even with the dog, we made good time getting down, but then something bizarre happened that I can't quite explain. The dog began exploring as soon as we let her off the rope. She was in dog heaven, sniffing and darting around on her feet. She would run from one person to the other as we made our way back to the work site. At one point, the cave splits into 4 passages, and the dog seemed to just run out of juice. She just stuck right by either B or me, and it seemed kind of odd. As we progressed further into the cave, she would only stay by B. She seemed very edgy, like she saw something she didn't like. As we approached the short drop-off before the hole, she stopped and would only come further if we coaxed her. The hair on the back of her head, or the back of her, stood up on end, like when somebody gets a cold rush of air and the hair stands up on the back of theirs. Finally, we got within 20 feet of the hole, and she began to whimper and hide behind B. Her tail was between her legs, and she was cowering on the ground. It was very strange. I have seen her square off with dogs twice her size, but now she acted like Satan himself was lurking in the darkness. I figured there must have been animals that used the cave as a home, and Whip smelled their scent. Too bad it upset her, because there was no way she was going to get into the passage. We decided with this new development of the nervous dog, one of us would work while the other stayed with the dog a few feet away from where we normally rested. We got right back into our routine of drilling and hammering. With our extra supply of batteries, we were able to really push hard on the drill and not worry about using up the batteries. This did not make our work any easier, but it did speed things up a little bit. Progress was still slow, but I didn't really mind. And then a blue note, he says, my journal goes on for a while about the progress we were making. The entire time we worked, Whip did not move. She just laid there on the rope bag shivering. She would whimper from time to time. Only thing I didn't think about at the time was she would not take her eyes off the hole. We should have been more observant of this
I
intuitive
agree.
animal. 100% listen to your dog. um,
Whenever there's animals in like a scary setting, if you will, and
mhm.
they're just like, oh, well, my dog kept on whimpering and like barking at like this, for example, hole in the wall and like scratching at it, trying to get out and like was trying to pull me with it,
Yeah,
but they just ignored the whole time. I'm like, dude,
I know. I'm
they
like,
gave you
why
so
would
many
you?
warning
Yeah, why would
signs.
you not? Obviously, if the dog is freaked out, and dogs are kind of like, you know, the most intuitive fucking thing that humans interact with ever, I would be like, oh, I should be freaked out too. It's kind of like when my dog doesn't like someone, I'm like, oh, maybe I don't like you either. Let's see. So he then goes back to his cave journal and says, "We were on our fourth battery when the second bizarre thing happened to us. B was working. He had just finished drilling a hole and was getting ready to hammer on the bullpen when he stopped working and looked into the hole. I was kicking back, almost asleep, and hardly paid attention. B had his light on it by his side to illuminate the work area. I could see in the eerie glow a puzzled and intense look on his face. He looked over at me and shook his head. I asked him what was up. He said that he swore he just heard a strange noise emanating from the hole. He said it sounded like rock sliding on rock, kind of like a grinding noise. I assumed his ears were just ringing from the drill because he hadn't worn earplugs to this trip. He assured me he heard what he said he heard. I didn't have an explanation, so I went back to dozing. B sat all quiet in the cave for a long time before he resumed work. Also, he would stop from time to time and just listen. B is very grounded and not B is very grounded and not one to pursue some imaginary sound. I believe he heard something, but I'm not too concerned about what it was. I assume we'll figure it all out when we get into the passage. The final battery lasted about another hour or so. We were sitting around talking about our progress when I decided to see if I could get my head through the hole. My head fit easily, but there was no way my shoulders were going in. As I was kneeling there, contemplating how close we were, I noticed something that B overlooked. The wind had stopped. In all the times that I've been in this cave, I have always felt the wind blowing. The last time we were out here working on the cave, the wind was blowing worse than ever. Even earlier, we remember the breeze cooling us off, but now nothing. B said he doesn't know when it stopped. The rumbling has ceased too. Just bizarre. The plain old cave was becoming mysterious. We talked a long time in the dark in the cave. We debated what could possibly be causing the unusual events to occur. I think part of the reason we were sitting in the dark was because we were too hammered to move. We could come up with no reasonable explanation for the strange things happening in the cave. After sitting for another hour and a half, we slowly loaded up our gear and started for the surface. Whip could not have been happier to get out of there. Once again, we left some tools in the cave. We just put them in the hole. Not enough people used the cave to worry about, plus we were too tired to care. We made a lot of progress. It helps to have the extra batteries. We have a long way to go, but it sure is nice to see how far we've come. Click to see our progress on the hole. Uh, the first time that I read this, I remember looking at it and being like, that's the same picture. Because, like, where's the other one? Like, homies, you've done nothing. That they've doubled the size of the hole. That's basically what they've done. And
Yeah, but the
if
first one to the second one was they just took out the glove.
literally, yeah, I swear to God, that's all they did. I don't believe that they made any actual progress. Blue Note says the rest of the journal talks about climbing out of the cave, getting a room hotel, and crashing. In retrospect, I can't believe how casual we were about everything that was happening in the cave. At the time, the only thing we could think about was getting into the passage. Everything else was just a minor distraction. So then the next one is called Noises. This is from March 3rd of 2001. So I believe so this is about 3 weeks before he starts the website. It took us 3 weeks to get before we got back to Mystery Cave again. Our attitudes have changed a bit since we first started the project. In the beginning, we looked at the whole thing as a fun adventure. Since the last trip, we found ourselves taking a more serious approach. On the drive this time, our conversation was a little more subdued than before. We hadn't talked much since the last trip, not for any reason but scheduling conflicts. Instead of discussing ways to get through the passage, we found ourselves talking about rational explanations for what had happened. Neither of us had any ideas that would explain the unusual occurrences we experienced on the last trip. We were amused to find out that neither one of us had talked much about the last trip to other people. This is a complete reversal from the other trips. It's been fun to report to our friends and family about our progress, and it's always been fun to tell people about the tight squeezes we're going to have to go through to get into the passage. Most people have little desire to voluntarily subject themselves to incredibly tight places. Actually, neither do I, but I will do it in order to get to the other side. It's good motivation. We left town early in the afternoon to beat traffic. I don't really recall what time we finally got to the cave. Like I said, the mood was subdued. We got rigged up and started down. Obviously, B left his dog at home this time. We essentially took the same gear as last time. We left some of the tools in the hole to save our backs. B scraped his arm on the descent. Not real bad, fortunately. He waited until we got down to patch it up. We had our fresh batteries and 4, maybe 3.5 fresh arms. I had high hopes that this would be the day. We started out pretty slow, but when we got started working on the hole, the thickness was about 3 inches. As we have enlarged the hole, the thickness has increased. As a result, our progress has become slower, but still we continued with as much energy as we could. The hole was big enough for at least for me to put the hammer through the hole for reference, and then put the camera into the hole to take a picture of Floyd's tomb. It is difficult to get the exact feel of the tomb, but the lowest point near the back of the picture is about 7 inches high, the width about 20 to 24 inches. The hammer is a small 5-pound sledge. Note the abundance of rock on the passage floor. And this is that photo. Just so we're clear, this is what they're planning to crawl through.
That was my follow-up question,
Yes.
and I'm not a fan.
I agree with you. I would never do this. As somebody who likes caving, I would never do this.
You'd have to be like a slug.
Literally.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like
so
multiple people or just the guy who's writing this?
the two of them, I think, him and B, are like the ones who want to get through and do
Get
that.
on in there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he goes on to say, this trip I wanted to see if we could speed up the work by using larger masonry bits. I purchased some good sized one from the hardware store. One was larger in diameter than the rest. We tried pushing for all that we were worth, and all we got was tired. The larger bit just created too much friction for our strength. It might have worked with a hammer drill, but we didn't have one. The longer bit worked fine with our drill. We relied on it for most of the work that we did for this trip. I thought we were going to be out one bit and the drill and my hand when it broke off towards the end. I was pushing hard and I could as I could on the drill with the bit a few inches in the wall when it snapped. I nearly rammed the drill through the wall from pushing so hard. We were able to retrieve the bit and keep using it minus a couple inches. It still worked great. Only once in a great while did we resort to a hammer and chisel. Work was proceeding as normal until about the time we were on our 4th battery. I was kneeling down and working with the drill, slowly getting it into the wall this time. I had my earplugs in, my safety glasses on, and I was lost in my own thoughts. Suddenly, over the squeal of the drill wearing down the rock, I heard a strange noise. It was loud. I could hear it over the noise of the drill, even though I had earplugs in. At first I thought it was just the drill bit doing its job on the cave. I would frequently complain by screeching and whining as we forced it into the wall. But this was different. It took me several full seconds to comprehend that this was coming from inside the hole and not from the bit. I stopped drilling and yanked my earplugs out in time to hear the most terrible scream I've ever heard, trail off and echo into the darkness of the cavern. I stared wide-eyed at the hole. For several moments I didn't move, nor did I breathe. I turned to look at B. Moments earlier he had been lying on the rope bag catching a nap. Now he was standing upright, mouth open, with a look of concern on his face. I turned and looked at the hole again, expecting to see a demon face staring back at me. Nothing was different. I fixed my gaze on the back of the squeeze, where the limits of my light reached. There was no motion, only darkness beyond the reaches of my light. In the complete silence that followed, I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. Not another sound could be heard in the cave. Suddenly, I heard a scraping noise behind me and straightened up. I nearly knocked myself out, hitting my head on the overhang. It was just B moving to turn his light on, but I was so wired it nearly sent me to my grave. B spoke again, and I jumped. He said to get some rocks and get them into the hole. He explained that whatever animal had made that noise might be able to get through the hole. I immediately grabbed a few rocks and hoisted them through the opening. Using the handle of the sledgehammer, I slid the rocks further back into the tunnel, as far back as I could reach, creating a wall between us and the other side. Since the squeeze is so small, it didn't take long. The entire time I was doing this, however, I was thinking that noise certainly did not come from an animal. I didn't know if B really thought, or what B really thought it was, or if he was just trying to convince himself that he didn't hear anything at all. From the time it happened to the writing of this journal entry 2 days later. Oh, okay. I have tried to come up with some possible source for just such a noise. I described it, I would say it sounded like a cross between a man screaming in fear and a cougar screaming in pain. It sounded like it came from the hole and was roughly 100 feet away. The horrific noise reverberated through the cave and through my ears. B estimated the scream lasted about 8 to 10 seconds. My best guess is about 5 seconds. 3 while I was drilling, the other 1 to 2 seconds to drop the drill and yank the plugs off, and 1 to 2 of sheer terror. It's hard to tell how much time passes when you're listening to a solo from the depths of Hades. After I filled the back passage with rocks, we just sat there listening in silence. My breathing was more rapid than usual. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, B suggested we get back to work and keep an eye out for movement in the hole. We put a light in the passage and shined to the back of Floyd's tomb. It was only at this point that we realized the wind had stopped again and the rumbling could no longer be heard. To say I was nervous was an understatement. I didn't say anything to B nor him to me. Back to the drilling, B took over work, which was fine because I wasn't exactly worn out, but I didn't mind being further from the hole. B would stop from time to time and listen. I just sat watching him with my light on. I wasn't close to the entrance of the hole, but I still found myself looking behind me down the passage to the still water. Every time my light would cast an unusual shadow, my heart would jump. My imagination was running wild. Oddly, B seemed to be less concerned about the strange noises than me. After a short time, he seemed to be focused entirely on getting through the passage. I was still straining to listen above the sound of the drill. I've never heard anything. Oh, I heard nothing but how now the familiar sound of carbide on stone. As I contemplate the possible scenarios that might play out on the other side of the passage, I had found myself strangely getting somewhat excited again about getting through. It might have been fatigue taking its toll on my mind, or the thought of something valuable on the other side. My thoughts were broken when B let out a yell, possibly a cuss word. He said the drill battery was dying, but he had broken off quite a large relative section he was working on. He set the useless drill aside and picked up hammer and bullpen. He started wailing away at the hole created by the bit. After nearly 10 solid minutes of hammering, he sat back against the rock, sweating and nearly out of breath. The bullpen was still protruding from the cave wall. He handed the hammer to me, inviting me to take a few swings. I held up my hand and shook my head. I'd been ready to exit this cave for a while now. He didn't press the issue, and without speaking, we both started gathering our gear. Several times I had to stop and wait for B, not because he was moving slow. I was just more eager to get out. Few times had I felt better than that night stepping out of the cave into the chilly night air. And then our next post is from the 13th. And this one has quite a few pictures, so I'm excited. It's amazing what a couple good meals and a little sleep can do for someone's attitude. Even though we still had memories of the strange noise fresh in our mind, we relit our fire of enthusiasm. On the other side of the passage seemed so close. We were sure that this would be the day. We got to the cave and started to work our way down the hole. Getting back into the darkness of the cave brought back the memories of the night before. The sight of the circle rock illuminated by our headlamps, the smell of the dirt in the air, the sound we made as we crawled across the rock. Once we reached the entrance to Floyd's tomb, however, we were once again ready to blaze the trail leading to an undiscovered part of the cave. We immediately noted the presence of the breeze blowing out of the hole and the rumbling. The bullpen sticking out of...
it goes.
Yep. The bullpen sticking out of its hole was an obvious sign of where we needed to start work for the day. Bay took over where he left off the day before. I took up my residence in the same spot I occupied the night before, even though I was already well rested and wanting to start work. B was making the hammer sing with each blow. After a mere 2 or 3 minutes, he let out a cheer. He turned to reveal a handful of rock that used to be attached to the cave. His breathing was heavy, but he had a big smile on his face, and so did I. For the first time, the strange noise had been forgotten, and the vision of success captured the attention. Click to see the size of the opening at this point. That is still, I feel, not shit, but you know, who
They're
am
making
I?
great gowns in their minds.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
like, we got this, we're doing
Um,
it, we're doing it.
Yep. The lower left-hand corner of the hole had been giving us grief because of the thickness of the wall at that point. And it does look thick. I mean, from like the bottom left, that is like 4 or 5 inches easily that they had to get through.
Mm-hmm.
B now held in his hand the crumbled remains of that corner. Our excitement consumed as we examined the hole. I took the hammer and pounded away at the surface of the hole. The idea was to remove the jagged edges that would take their toll on my skin. The size looked right. Now this was the moment we had been waiting for. I cautiously approached the entrance of Floyd's tomb. I decided the best way to enter the small hole was to place one arm over my head, turn my head sideways, and slowly work my way in. I soon determined that this was not going to work. The hole was still small. If I was going to make it in without widening the hole anymore, I was going to have to put both arms over my head in a diving position, turn my head sideways, and slip into the tomb. The width of the entrance was the limiting factor. The height was sufficient. The arms overhead position flared my shoulder blades out, but there was still room to get in, plus the arms overhead gave me the best squeeze side to side.
No.
In order to enter straight into the hole, I stood on my feet and bent over to get level with the entrance. My knees were bent and the position was uncomfortable, a sort of semi-squatting position, bent at the waist and arms overhead. Plus, I had to slightly turn my upper torso to the left in a counterclockwise rotation to negotiate the angle of the entrance. Notice in the last photo, the entrance generally slopes to the right. I got my arms through the entrance with minor scrapes. Next came my head. By keeping it turned sideways, I was able to get in for the most part up to my shoulders. When I got to my shoulders, I could feel the rocks touching all around my shoulders and chest. It was not stopping me, but I was definitely scraping many surfaces of my body. I decided to just push through, keeping in mind that I was going to have to come back out eventually. The pain was not too bad, and I was in. Well, at least my upper half of my body was. At least I could get a good idea what the tomb was going to be like. Here's a flattering photo of my best side. Notice the size of the area we had to work with, and the ledge overhead is an obstacle. And that's him getting into that small ass hole.
Dude, I kind of agree with some peeps in chat, bro. If they're doing this, like the teeny tiny holes, if you're just going spelunking just cuz, more power to you. But if you're fitting into like something where your arm couldn't even fit through in the first place, you don't have any survival
Yeah,
instincts.
I'm gonna give a mad agree to that. When I read this when I was younger, I was like, honestly, I would probably want to do it too. But now, in my 30s, you could not pay me.
No.
You could
You
not
could not
pay
pay me
me.
anyway.
Nah, I liked caving when I was younger a lot. I probably would have been down for it.
Hmm.
Not if I know that I'm gonna get cut, but like I would look at that and be like, we can get this open a little more and comfortably fit through. We could do it. But I ain't going through a hole that size. There's no way in hell.
Yeah, no.
Continuing on, Ted says, once inside the tomb, I had a few inches all around me in which to position my body. This was the longest part of the passage, and it was conveniently located right at the beginning of the crawl. That gave me a little room to get positioned to crawl even further into the passage. Inside the tomb, it gave me a whole new outlook of what it was going to be like to crawl through. Even though this was the largest part of the crawl, it was still small. I could move my head around freely, but every direction I turned, I was staring at a wall of solid rock. When I spoke to B, my voice sounded muffled, like I was talking in a small box. I could rest my chest on the passage floor, but the rocks were uncomfortable. I turned my head to look further ahead, but couldn't see past the wall of rocks that I had built the day before. The squeeze towards the end of the passage was closer now, and appeared even more narrowed. I didn't know if I could squeeze through or not. I knew it would be close, and I wanted to crawl further in the passage. First, however, I had to get some of the loose rocks that were lying on the passage out of my way. I was disappointed to find out that most of the rocks that had looked loose were actually attached to the floor. I was hoping to just be able to scrape them out of the way. I had pushed the sledgehammer. I had pushed the sledgehammer into the passage before me, so at this point I used it to push the rock wall we had made further back in the passage. Then I dragged the sledgehammer back and forth across the floor to move any loose rocks or break up the solid ones. By sliding the head of the hammer under the squeeze, I determined the narrowest part of the squeeze was about 7 inches high. Phew, no thank you.
Like from the ground?
7 inches high? That you can't fit through that. There's no way. You cannot fit through that. I don't believe that. Dude,
And so
my
we need to know the depth of a rib cage.
I do not understand. I can't. I don't remember that part. That being like the smallest part. Fuck that. I would never. No. Anyways, the entire time I had my head in the passage, B was just kicking back, listening to my descriptions and progress reports. Up to this point, the size of the passage was not too much of a big deal. It was an incredibly small passage, but only my upper body was in since the largest part of the passage, and my arms could move freely. I was pretty calm. Then it was time for a push. Nope. I slid the hammer up as far as I could reach since my body filled the entire entrance. I could not slip the tool out, so it was easier to push it ahead. In order to rotate my hips so that they cleared the entrance, I could relax a bit and get in position to work towards the squeeze. I decided to try the one-arm forward technique to get through. The passage was so narrow on one way or the other, and I had to keep it in the same position. This crawl was tight. Moving forward at this point of the passage was relatively easy. I could use my forward arm, which was my left arm, to pull my other arm, pull and my other arm to push. At the same time, I would wiggle my body, trying to arch as much as I could to keep my chest off the rocks. I tried both ways and determined I would turn my head to the right. It felt the most comfortable. I began to learn things as I went. I was determined that a small flashlight in one hand would be nice, and that way I could shine ahead to get a better idea of what I was about to crawl over. This was a difficult maneuver because I had to look overhead, but since my head was turned, it became immediately obvious that we were going to have to do some of our work removing rocks from the passage floor. As I moved along the surface, I was constantly scraping my chest on rocks. They were sharp and it was painful. Occasionally, I would cause a rock to slip along under my chest and actually wedge me between it and the top of the passage. No. I would then have to back up and either try to remove the rock to the side with my cheek using a sweeping motion with my head, or back out and find a way to remove it with my hand. My little trip into the passage represents a major milestone of my caving career. When I started caving, I did not feel overly comfortable going through tight spaces. Even with the little squeeze at the beginning of this cave would have been an obstacle to overcome, but pushing myself and forcing myself to try narrow passages, I have become much more calmer about tight spaces. Still, the passage represented a new benchmark in small spaces, and I had not been faced with anything this small. I don't remember having to take off my helmet before now. With this passage, it is mandatory. As I mentioned before, not only do I take off my helmet, but I have to turn my head to the side in order to fit. The journey into the tomb went like this. After I twisted my hips into the passage, I took a few minutes to stop and work out a game plan. Most of the length of my legs were still outside the entrance. They were just dangling in the air. The tomb was still big enough to fit around my head and even more around my arms, and I was in a free position. The narrowest part of the passage was about 10 feet in. At this point, I was 3.5 feet in. At about the 4-foot mark, I would have to commit to whatever position I felt comfortable and stay that way until the 12-foot mark, in which time the cave started opening up. I went with the left arm forward and my head turned to the right. B had given me a flashlight and I held it in my hand and I inched it forward to try to brush the loose rock away with my left arm. This was somewhat successful, but there were a lot of rocks I missed that could not move easily. As mentioned, the first little bit of the crawl moved along fairly quickly since there was little room above me to negotiate the passage, but then the walls started to close in around me. I had a few extra inches on each side of me, but the top of the cave was getting very low, at about the 7 foot mark. I could feel the top rubbing my back as I would arch. Another half foot and I couldn't arch my back anymore. I would just have to push ahead with my toes and pull forward with my arm. I decided that it would be a good time to see if I could back out. I tried it and it was pretty easy. This gave me a lot more confidence. Still, I had bee tie webbing to my feet just in case he had to pull me out. Last shot of my feet before getting all the way in. Absolutely not. I just want to put that out there.
No, again, you could not pay me.
No, literally no. My neck was starting to get sore from being cranked to the side. My head was getting heavy, but to rest it, the only option I had was to lay down on broken rocks. It was painful, but I did it frequently. I started at the wall. I was staring at the wall to my right. It was a mere 4 to 5 inches from my face. Most of the time, I wasn't watching the wall. Either I had my eyes closed, which sometimes I do when I go through a tight spot, or the light shining in the direction that did me any good. But it was very quiet in the tomb, other than my own breath. I was breathing heavy from the effort it took to move. Thankfully, the breeze was present and cooled me off. By lifting my head, carefully touching the ceiling from time to time, I could gauge the size of the passage my body would soon pass through, much like a cat using its whiskers to gauge an opening in a fence. That's what cat whiskers are for?
Finding, like, how they fit into things?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why if you
That's
cut them off, cats
crazy.
can't walk right.
Oh my god, I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's
but that's why
crazy.
it's okay to like shave off or cut dog whiskers because it's not used for the same purpose.
Yeah, see, I don't own cats, but I own dogs, so I knew that part, but I
Yeah.
had no idea that cats use their whiskers to gauge movement.
Hmm.
Wow, crazy. Okay. While lying in the darkness, in a passage deep within a cave, it is a unique position to ponder. A mountain literally rests on top of me, and the entire earth is lying below me. One tiny movement of the earth, and I would cease to exist. Or worse, to recognize the fear shared by Floyd Collins as he laid there trapped for days within the heart of Mother Earth, incapable of freeing himself from his earthen prison. Picture yourself in my position, lying on your stomach, your left arm is extended over your head, your right arm is on your side, having only a few inches in which to move. Your arms and hands are sore and bleeding from crawling and pulling yourself across broken rocks. Your entire body is resting on the rocks. Your neck is tired of holding your head off of the rocks, and you gently rest your cheek against the rock to catch a break. Once you start, again, you have to push with your toes to scoot your body forward, sliding along the rocks. After moving a few inches, you are breathing hard and have to rest. As you inhale, you can feel your back pressing against the top of the squeeze of the cave. It takes several minutes before you recover enough to press forward. The entire time you are lying there thinking about if you're going to back out and what if. Yeah, that's pretty much what I had going for me at this point in the passage. This next photo, I want to give a trigger warning to anybody with claustrophobia.
No. I thought he went in with his hands first, like
Um,
above his head.
so he did. My assumption is that he took the camera with him because he said it was a tiny Kodak.
Uh-huh.
So I wonder if he took the camera with him or if this is a different photo of after they got out. Let me. He does have an editor's note that says, I decided that this would be a good time to throw in a photo of the squeeze, quote unquote. He does say
Mm-hmm.
this photo was actually taken on a different trip, but it shows how things were at that point in the passage.
Oh my god, so they do this multiple times.
Yeah. Um,
Oh my god.
so he goes on to say, when I reached the point where my back was rubbing and I could feel with my head the passage was not getting bigger. I knew I was most likely going to get through. Not going to get through. Still, I decided to give it one more push. If I had been in this position a year ago, I would have been in a state of panic, but not today. I was pretty pumped. After I took a few minutes to rest, I went for it. I exhaled completely all the air in my lungs. This caused my chest to collapse enough to scoot forward a few inches. Because it takes so much effort to scoot, I only went a few inches before, and then I had to stop to breathe. As I inhaled, my chest pressed hard against the floor and my back against the top. It took a little longer to get my breath back. Unbelievably, I did it again. Exhale, scoot, rest. Again, only a few inches. Repeat. I took a few extra minutes to enjoy the position, quote unquote, pinned in this small passage. Wow, I couldn't believe how relaxed I was. I tried one more time to exhale and scoot. My back was rubbing so too much to continue. Despite the failed effort, I was psyched, and I took several long minutes to lay there and recover from the effort. B had been encouraging me the entire time. It was super fun to hear me cheer on as he saw my shoes go deeper and deeper into the hole. Backing out was not too difficult, but it did take some work. I encountered the same obstacles as when I went in. After I wiggled my hips out of the hole, which took some time, I had trouble getting my shoulders out. Both arms were completely overhead at this point. My shirt was getting caught on the rocks. My shoulders were brushing against the sharp rocks. After struggling to find a good position, I just pulled my upper body out. Scrape. My shirt pulled over my head, and I had some scrapes on my shoulders, but I didn't care. To me, this trip was a success. I had pushed myself beyond what I thought was possible. I know that the entrance and looked in the narrow passage I had just been in. The rock wall was now at the 11-foot mark. I had pushed it forward little by little with my arm. The smallest point was at the 9-foot mark. We were close. Between the work and excitement, I was tired. I just sat on my rope bag grinning, and wow, what a trip. Our progress on the whole. Oh, that's the progress. He includes like a little collage of like all the different things we've seen of the whole. When you put them side by side, it does not look like much, I won't lie. It does not look that
Oh
much.
no.
So then we go to April 7th, 2001. And then at the very top, he said, here's a picture of B, edited to protect his identity with the pipe we made. I took the picture facing away from the tomb. He is sitting on the rope bag we used as a bed. Behind him and to his left is a passage that leads down to still water. Behind him to his right is the last drop off before the passage. You can see some orange webbing we used to climb up and down. And so this is that.
Hmm.
Uh, and after that, he says, um, I took an oath. I made a vow. I would not leave the cave until I'd made it through that passage, conquered Floyd's tomb. This would be the trip. It had been a long time since we had been back out to Mystery Cave. We had been busy, though. We had made tools that he had talked about. It was fun coming up with ideas for tools. We made a squeeze box to determine the best technique for getting through the tight spot. Plus, we knew nothing about how much the rock we need to remove before getting through. We were excited to get back out to the cave and finish the project. Our climb down the passage was a little bit longer than usual since we had these extra tools to carry. Once we got down, we immediately got to work using B's scraper tool, which is what he's holding. We could hammer the pipe on one end and the scraping tool on the other to dig into the rock. Then we could push the debris out of the way all the way through the passage with our that was in our way. When we needed to measure our progress, we would turn the scraper sideways in the passage and observe the clearance. We worked for about 2 hours before I had the desire to try the tomb. We just wanted to make sure I was going to make it through on the first try. B made one more sweep of the passage floor, clearing out any loose rocks. My spoonerisms are on fire today. From where I would be crawling and pushing the wall. I made preparations for the crawl by fashioning duct tape suspenders to prevent my shirt from sliding while going across the rock. I went with a flashlight in my hand, even though my hand would be at my side. I knew I would need it once I got through. As an expression of faith, I did not tie a rope to my feet. I was confident I was going to make it, and finally I made the attempt. Since we didn't do any work to the entrance, I had to do the same routine to enter the passage. Once I got my upper body through, I shined the flashlight ahead of me to work out a plan of attack. Um, this time, however, I was able to continue moving forward from my original point. I reached the lowest point in the passage, and I could tell that it was still going to be tricky, even with the loose rocks and the work that we had done clearing them before. I still felt sharp pebbles rolling under my chest as I slid along. When I could feel it brushing against the top of my back, I reverted to my technique of exhaling. Exhale, scoot, stop to catch my breath, repeat. After a few inches of scooting, I could raise my head off the floor and squeeze through. I relayed this information to B, and we both took a few seconds to celebrate. During the rest of the slide through the passage, B was cheering me on. Virgin Passage and Neil Armstrong territory were the phrases he kept repeating, and I was grinning ear to ear. Even though the passage was beginning to get large, it was still slow going. I had to continue scooting for another 1.5 feet before I could slide my arms underneath me to use them to crawl. At this point, I felt my journey was essentially over. I was able to sit up and slightly move the rock wall we had erected several trips ago. Those rocks served as a somber reminder with little caution, or that a little caution would be wise. I shouted back to B that I was through. We had took a moment to congratulate ourselves on our success. B would likely never be able to squeeze through the passage and see what I was seeing, so I gave him a description of what the cave looked like. At this point, I only had my mini mag, so I could only see a little bit into the passage. The end of the passage made a gentle right turn and seemed to go for a ways. I was unable to do anything at this point but sit due to the size of the passage. All of the broken rocks we had pushed through Floyd's tomb were around me at this point. There was no other sign of human intrusion. I had to wait until B passed me my helmet to get a better look at the cave. B used the rope pull, and B used the rope pull we made to slide me the end of a rope. Then I was able to pull all of my gear through the squeeze. The first thing he sent through was my helmet and light. After I got my light fired up, I was able to see our new section of the cave. Hours. It was an exciting experience to see the results of hours of hard work over the course of several weeks. At this point, we still had no idea what the cave had to offer. The only thing I could see was the passage immediately following the squeeze. It was a narrow passage with a low ceiling. I would easily be able to get through, but I would have to crawl. I began taking pictures so I could show B. The first section of the new passage, I was almost laying down since the passage was so small. My feet are extended in front of me, as you can see. Notice the broken rock on the floor of the cave. This passage looks like a dead end, but gently turns right near the end. And this is what he's talking about. I still don't like that. No way in hell.
So that's the quote unquote like unknown part that they wanted to
Yep.
explore.
Yep.
But okay, so we got his helmet, his light, obviously a little camera he's like doing.
Mm-hmm.
But like he said it took weeks to even get there. See, I would have given up.
Oh, me too. I don't have that kind of determination. Absolutely not.
Especially like 25 years ago?
Yep.
No.
Yep. Yeah, no. So then
Sir.
he goes on to say, I strapped on my gloves and knee pads, grabbed the camera, and began my adventure. I crawled through this passage pictured above, which is only about 20 feet long. The next section was about 40 feet long. In addition, it had a higher ceiling. The walls were a little wider than the section I had just crawled through. It was obvious that no one had been there before me. The first formation I saw was several chunks of what looked like grated cheese tied together on one end. The rest of the quote-unquote cheese was just flopping down. The second formation was just a tiny strands of rock, thinner than human hair. It looked pretty cool. I found several examples of both kinds of formations. I was not even through the second section, and I could barely hear B. Cave passages are not very acoustically friendly. I shouted at him that I would go for half an hour, then return. He said that would be fine, and just to be careful.
So is B staying on the other side of the squeeze, like
B,
not in it?
if you remember from earlier, he mentioned that B had an injury that made it to where he should never be able to walk again. He cannot crawl through that squeeze. Like, he just does not have the strength.
So he just has the rope.
Yeah, so he's got the rope that he essentially
It's like a
pushed to,
lifeline?
yeah, pushed to Ted. So if he really needs help getting out, he's got that rope and B can pull him out of the hole.
Okay. I had a feeling, but I was like, wouldn't he have just followed through, like had two explorers instead of one, but
Yeah.
always having one person behind just in case sounded better. So I was just
Yeah.
like, let me fact check this real quick.
Yeah. So yes, he goes on to say that he discovered a crystal formation on the wall. It was several layers on the wall resembling candle wax that was allowed to melt down and drip on the wall. There were several small stalactite looking formations formed by these crystals, and then he includes a photo of it. I'm not going to lie to you. I see it on the right a little bit, but it, yeah, 2000s Kodak camera. um, so he says the passages continued another 100 feet before the cave opened up a little bit. It was at the end of a short, straight segment of the cave. At the very end, the cave made a bend to the left and opened up into a room. Just at the point where the room began, there was a round rock that appeared to be leaning against the wall. This seemed odd, but singular formations are common in caves, so this is by no means unique. I had crawled and stepped over several large chunks of rock that fell down from the ceiling, but this one was more round than others. Once past the rock, the room opened up to the height of about 15 feet. It was about 15 feet in width and about 30 feet in length. At the far end of the room, there was another passage leading straight out. As I entered the room, I had an eerie feeling. It was like the old saying that I felt I was being watched. Once again, the excitement of a new find faded, and the memories of the mysterious side of the cave crept back into my mind. And suddenly, I felt very alone. Fortunately for my ego, I was nearly out of time and had to get back to B before my half hour was up. I took several pictures of the room. I was going to just get a feel for how long the next passage was when something caught my attention. On the left side of the room, on the wall, was I was about eye level. I discovered what appeared to be a hieroglyphic. It was a single
Hmm.
drawing that almost appeared to be just a part of the rock coloration. It looked like a very crude representation of people standing below a symbol. I was pumped. This means that there could be another entrance to the cave. Even if the other entrance was closed or
What?
blocked off, it might be an opportunity to open it up and get B into the cave. I took another look at the drawing just to make sure I could describe it to B. Then I took some more pictures and headed back to B. When I got back to the squeeze, I could barely talk fast enough to let B know everything I uncovered. Um, I determined in advance that I would attempt to go head first back through the squeeze, and that I could definitely make it by going. Nelson, I'm telling a scary story. Nelson, Nelson. um,
Nelson got beef.
he doesn't like the story. He said, "Stop talking about dark, scary
It's
places."
scary.
He just made a noise to that. It's so funny. Um, yeah, decided to go head first. I bet you that's where that photo came. I bet it's head first the other way is where they took it.
Mm-hmm.
I started into the squeeze very close into the tight spot, so I could at least know that I would have it over with soon. It turned out to be tricky getting through though. I still had to shift my hips to the right a little to get through, but I just kept plugging away at it. I was a little over halfway through when something bizarre happened. I was laying there taking a brief break when I heard a sound deep within the cave. It was a faint but distinct sound of rock sliding on rock. My blood froze in its veins. I couldn't move. I just laid there straining to hear the sound again. Nothing. I quickly began to scoot forward towards the exit. I didn't mention the sound to B, but I did recall one of our earlier trips when B said he heard the same thing. The task of getting out of our hole turned out to be as painful as I thought it would be. I had to put my arms overhead and force my shoulders through the hole. I definitely left some skin behind as I slipped through. B helped me. I wiggled my upper body out of the passage. Then I could catch myself with ease and lower my body out of the tomb. And I was out. B and I shook hands and began to load up our gear as we tried to listen for any sounds. That's pretty. As much as I looked forward to getting into the passage, it was a relief to get back out. It's pretty much how feel about caves in general. I love to go in, but I feel good when I get back out again. Um, and then a blue text says, something strange happened with the pictures I took in the new part of the cave. The pictures I took of the passage leading up to the large room all turned out just fine. Strangely, none of the pictures taken in the room turned out at all. Pictures of the round rock, and more importantly, pictures of the hieroglyphic I saw. Pictures taken before and after the room turned out great, but the negatives of the photos I had taken in the room were completely clear. Nothing I remember Oh, nothing. I remember what the hieroglyphic looked like, so I could draw a picture to give you guys an idea of what I saw. So this is a crude drawing of what he saw. Um, my one
Hmm.
thing that I do want to say is he said it looked like people standing under something, and I don't really see the people part of this, but okay.
I don't really either. Like I see the concept of like, you know how you typically draw stick figures, but there's no
Yeah.
head. There's no depiction of like top or bottom to it. Like,
Um,
okay.
He did put a caption on it, and it says, it's a crude drawing of what I saw, but it's accurate. The first thing I thought when I saw it was Blair Witch Project. It kind of has the
I was
same.
thinking that too.
Yeah, he said it kind of has the same feel to it. The symbol was in the center, and several figures looked like people raising their hands were below this. Oh, okay, so this is the image he saw, and then below this is where the stick people were. Um,
Mm.
Interesting. Wouldn't it be crazy if this were a map of the cave? Haha. uh, the
Mhm.
the next one says, this is the last picture before I enter the large room. At the end of the passage, partially hidden in the shadows, is the round rock that I saw. So this is what he goes. And I think I thought I saw it, but he does attach one where he said, I've enhanced the photo so that you can see it a little easier. And
Mm.
I kind of see it, but I'm blind as fuck anyway, so I can't see it really. And then this is the next entry from April 14th. Well, a couple days had passed, and B found somebody who wanted to explore the passage with us. B told me he talked to a few other people who couldn't make it because of scheduling. Um, even or Joe, B, and I set out early in the morning to make sure that we could spend all our time we wanted to in the passage. When we got to the cave, we were able to rig up and descend rather quickly. It helps when you don't have much to haul and like half of a hardware store. Joe was impressed by our work. Even B and I took a minute to pat ourselves on the back for our hard work. Um, I can't believe how easily Joe slipped through the passage. He said it was tight, but he sure didn't look like it. Once he got through, we passed in the gear, and then I started in. I told him how far to go and how long it would take, and I sent him on his way when he said that he wanted to essentially continue on by himself. As I laid there, I could hear him crawling into the darkness. His light disappeared after the first turn. I rested a minute or two, and then I began my journey back through the squeeze. It was disappointing not to get all the way into the cave and not be able to explore it to end. Actually, it's killing me. After I got through Floyd's tomb, I sat down and munched on a Cliff Bar while B and I chatted. I told him I would pay for a motel room if we wanted to stay the night. Then we could see how we were doing the next day to try to make another trip into the cave. Um, Suddenly, since I had not explored the cave completely, I could not offer any explanation of what could be making the scraping noise, but we heard it once more. The change of the wind, the rumbling, all of these things were inexplicable. But suddenly we both wished we had not sent Joe into this cave alone. B went to the hole and yelled into it, Joe! No answer. Not surprising, you can't hear on the other end when you're really far into a cave. We nervously awaited any sounds. Good sounds, that is, Joe type of sounds. 20-minute time limit we had set past, then 25 minutes. I really had no desire to climb back through the squeeze. My head was throbbing because I had hit it, and the squeeze would look tighter than ever. Still, I knew I was going to have to make sure Joe was safe. Just as I was getting prepared to go back through, I saw a light deep in the passage. Joe? I called out. Nothing. Joe! Still no answer. The light got brighter and brighter, and I could hear the noise of someone crawling across the broken rock that lined the cave. You okay, Joe? No, was his weak reply. When he got to the other side of the tomb, he said he wasn't feeling well. He quickly took off his gear and then put them in a bag so that we could pull it through. As I pulled the bag back through the passage, he began to climb through the tomb. We didn't even get a chance to question what he saw before he was coming back through. He quickly slipped through the squeeze and looked at the hole, and then finally we got a look at him. He looked terrible. His face was pale as he was out of breath. The dust covers the floor, and the squeeze has left its mark on his face and clothes. He has numerous small cuts and scratches. We had only a brief moment to look at the change before he started to head out of the cave. While Joe and B started for the surface, I took a minute to gather our gear, and then I stopped and listened into the passage. I heard nothing, and I felt nothing. The wind had stopped. Part of me wanted to get out of the cave as fast as possible, but the other part of me wanted to immediately climb in the passage and figure out what made this cave tick. Then was not the time, but I still felt a little dizzy from the injury. At that moment, I noticed B and Joe had made a good time getting up the cave passage, and I was left alone. Chills ran through my body as I scurried to catch up with them. Once outside, I figured we would be able to find out more from Joe, but when he got to the final climb, he just unclipped from the rope and went straight to his truck. In the light of day, he looked even worse than the cave. We could not get more information out of him. He just stared straight ahead on the drive. He was shaking like a leaf, and he said he was just cold. When we tried to question him, I asked if he saw the hieroglyphics. No. Did he hear us yelling? No. Did he see the round rock? No. Did he see crystals? No. He just went a little ways in and started to feel sick. Something was fishy about his answers. He would have had to have seen the crystals if he got far enough into the cave. And he couldn't hear us yelling, but why would he not elaborate? So that's the end of that one. And now I think that if I am right, this is the last one before the editor note. Yes.
Interesting.
So this is April 28th, 2001. 2 weeks after our trip with Joe, we'd made our way back to the cave. To prepare for this trip, we contacted local cave rescue groups and got permission to borrow their low voltage two-way phone. This phone consists of two transceivers on a long spool of thin wire. I would then be able to unwind the wire as I went into the passage to stay in contact with B the entire time. My head was doing fine. I still had a light red line to mark the spot where I got hit in my head when I tried to break the rock our trip before. Never went to a doctor, but it was a very painful experience. I have thought about what could have happened if I had been able to go into the passage. As we were rigging up the rope to descend into the cave, I felt something for the first time. I didn't want to go in. It was a feeling of foreboding. I was not receiving some premonition. I just had no desire to go into the underground world of the mystery cave. I didn't share this feeling with the bee at the time, even though I had no desire to go in. Right from the beginning, it seemed like the cave didn't want us there. Nothing went smooth. Every time we tried to clip a carabiner or tie a knot or attach something to a rope, we had to do it 2 or 3 times. We finally reached a point where we stopped to gather ourselves before continuing. Our load was relatively light, but we were taking forever to get in, and finally we made it. The trip through Floyd's tomb went smoothly, figuratively speaking. Since I was unable to tape while crawling in, my plan was to crawl in the section and stop and film on the video recorder I had brought before. I could video what I had been through and then video what I was going to go through next, and that would be how I would get from each section until the room. The small formations were too small to show up on video. With normal outside lighting, it would be no problem, but with my headlight as my only source of light, the effort was futile. Even though my progress was slow, it was steady. Things were going pretty good until the round rock. Once again, I got a strange feeling just like last time. I looked around carefully but saw nothing to be alarmed about. I proceeded to film the entire room. I got good shots of the rock from all angles. I got the walls, the ceiling, the floor, and I tried my best ability to get everything that I could. I even got some good tape of the figure on the wall. It was difficult to make out exactly what it was, but you could definitely tell something was there. After I taped everything to my satisfaction, I moved towards the end of the room to prepare to explore new territory. At the far end of the large room, there was a passage into the darkness. The entrance was about a foot lower than my head, and it looked like it continued for height as far back as I could see. The floor was made up of the same type of rocks. The ceiling had the same type of near-perfect arch, the old section of the mystery cave. It almost seemed to be out of place with the jagged atmosphere of a cave. I could only see back about 30 feet or so where the passage appeared to make a right, and I thought that it would be a good place to check in with B. It took a couple of beeps before he answered the phone, but once he did, his voice was still crystal clear. It sounded like he might have been snoozing. Had I been gone that long? He said he was doing fine and that I could take as much time as I needed. I thanked him and I hung up. His patience has been wonderful during this entire project. But that's when it happened. From behind me, I heard the scraping noise, and it was loud. It was close. It was coming from the large room that I had just left. I wheeled around to face whatever had made that noise. When I did, I lost my presence of mind and stood up at the same time. Crunch. My helmet crashed into the passage ceiling, my light broke, and I was buried in heavy darkness. Pain shot through my neck and down my back. My helmet had protected my head, but my neck was nearly numb from the impact. Fear enveloped me and my knees began to weaken. I slowly and involuntarily slumped to my knees. I gently set the camera down as I began to see stars from the pain in my upper neck. The scraping noise lasted only a second, and now the only sound I could hear was my own pathetic, inspired breathing. Uh, Not only could I feel the fear thick upon my chest as the darkness seemed to hold me in place, I felt like I was vulnerable from every direction. I wanted to turn and look behind me or even side to side or in front of me, but everywhere I looked I only saw black. Finally, I broke the stupor of terror long enough to reach for the alternate life source, a mini-mag in my helmet. I twisted the light to turn it on, and when I did, I nearly cried. I had forgot to put fresh batteries in it, and now I could barely see more than a few feet. Still, it was better than nothing. I immediately began shining the light with all of my might into the large room. I strained to get a glimpse of any movement in the room. Nothing. I was shaking violently as I tried to figure out what to do. My mind was not thinking clearly, and I honestly thought that I was going to die right there in the cave. For a fleeting moment, I wondered how B would ever find me if anything happened to me. Then it hit me like a boulder. The phone. My mind must have been clearing up at this point because I also thought about the glow sticks. Without taking my eyes off the large room, I felt around my pack for my glow sticks. I found one and ripped it open. I could tell something was wrong by the way it sounded. It had been inadvertently broken and was now useless. I chucked it on the ground and searched my pack for another one. I took my eyes off the large room only to check it. I found another glow stick and broke it to light it up. The soft green glow created eerie colors on the walls of the cave. The stick provided barely enough light to see the immediate area and provided no hint for what lies ahead. I felt for my pack around one more, taking my eyes off the room. I felt a third glow stick and ripped it off the package, breaking it to make sure it worked, and then I hesitated and threw the glow stick into the large room. The throw was a perfect one, and the stick sailed through the length of the room. For a brief moment, the light traveled across the room, and I saw nothing but cave walls. The absence of anything unusual in my state of panic. At the far end of the room, I got a brief glimpse of the round rock as the light bounced off it. Then the light went behind the rock and seemed to disappear. I was shaking, but at least I didn't see anything. Still, there was that noise. I used the glow stick light and the phone reel with... Oh, stick to light the phone reel with my fumbling fingers. I managed to plug the phone into the jack and put it to my ear and heard nothing. The usual beeps to indicate connection weren't there. Terrified, I pulled the phone from the jack and reinserted it again. Still silence. What could have happened? I just talked to B. I found myself sobbing with fear. I knew the only way out of here was back, but something was there. A third attempt of making contact with B was just met with the same results. As my shoulders touched the wall, I felt a powerful jolt of pain remind me of my collision with the roof of the cave. Despair, agony, terror. I can't say how long I was there, but my feet were tingling and my knees were sore. The pain in my back crept lower, although my neck felt no different. I resolved to make an attempt to exit this passage. If I waited too long, I would lose that light. As I wound the cord for the phone, I could hear the squeak of the wheel each turn, bringing me closer to the tomb. I was traveling by the distance of the phone. The short trip through the room felt like an eternity. My only hope was that contact with the outside world would cease to exist, or wouldn't cease to exist when I found that the wire to the phone had broken, and that's why I couldn't contact B. I had never felt so
Ooh.
alone and hopeless. Buried deep within the earth, I had voluntarily descended into my own grave with a casket of solid rock. With the phone now useless, I just set it down in the passage, and my gaze was fixed on the round rock. I proceeded forward. My breathing was rapid, my throat was dry and aching. Seeing nothing, I took several rapid steps past the rock. But when I reached the other side, I recoiled in horror when I saw it. In the side passage near the floor was a hole, with another passage revealed. It had been covered by the rock, and it was now exposed. The rock could not have moved by itself. I backed away from the hole, and I collided with the opposite wall. I had not been paying attention in the pain in my back, but now it all came in fury. I stared down at the newly discovered passage. It went down a 45-degree angle, and it continued straight for as far as I could see. Several feet down, I could see a glow stick I had thrown. It illuminated the passage enough that I could tell that the walls were fairly smooth. The floor seemed to be the same way, unlike the rest of the cave. The passage was about 3 feet in diameter, um, as I could see. It would have been an easy passage to explore if I had the desire to do so, but right now I just wanted to get out into the daylight. As I turned from the large rock to the hole, I felt an almost overwhelming sense of panic fill my soul. It felt like a legion of demons was ready to attack me from behind. My only thought was to get out as quick as possible. When I got to the point of the passage where I had to crawl, I flung myself down on all fours, barely slowing down as I dropped. When my hands came in contact with the cave floor, I felt an electric shock all the way down my back, simultaneously down my arms. For the first time since this nightmare had begun, I let out a scream. I crumpled down on the rock, whimpering from fear and pain. I tried to listen to any noise in the cave. I could feel the silence pounding in my head. I knew from previous trips that B was still out of earshot, but I was close. Forcing myself to move, I winced as I pulled my body. Um, uh, Finally, I reached the last stretch of the cave before the squeeze. As I was crawling towards the beginning of the tomb, I called out to B, and he answered back. I was screaming for him to get everything ready to go. He asked if I was okay. Um, since he hadn't heard from me from the phone, he had gotten worried. I told him to get everything ready to go. When I reached, I flipped on my helmet and shoved it into the pack. For the first time, I realized I had forgot my video camera. In a fleeting thought, I cared no more about the camera than a passenger of the Titanic cared about a hat or a coat. I tried to pack the rope and told him to pull it through. Then I told him to start heading towards the surface as soon as he pulled the rope through. He asked why, and I screamed that there was something in the cave with us. My back arched with every move I made, and I knew it didn't matter, though. I was going to get through the tomb as fast as I could, injuries notwithstanding. Just as I started down the squeeze, I felt the wind in the passage increase, with the most nauseating stench I have ever experienced. It smelled like damp, rotting, rancid, putrid death. I almost started to dry heave. I pulled my shirt over my nose to shield me, and at this point, B smelled it too. He yelled, "What is that?" Then he yelled for me to hurry up. I told him I was coming, and I took a deep breath through my shirt, and I started back through. B's yelling intensified my fear and panic, as if that needed any help. I knew he could sense the urgency of getting out of this place. Still, I worked my way through, and I yelled up to him to start up, and that I would catch up with him as soon as I got through. He said he would, and I placed my glow stick inside the passageway, then began to climb out. Uh, Once I got out of the tomb, it was a plop when I hit the ground, and strangely, the pain focused on my shoulder, apparently not affecting my already sore back from the impact. I rolled over onto all fours and rose to my feet. The smell was much less intense outside of the passage. I grabbed the glow stick and used it to find my helmet. I began for the webbing to climb up. When I got to the webbing, I reached to grab hold and recoiled in horror. In the glow of the glow stick, I see for the first time the injuries on my arms. My forearms were covered in deep cuts and scrapes. The wounds were not deep enough to bleed freely, but rather ooze blood. In the brief moment I stopped, I noticed that there was a silence in the cave, no sounds coming from the passage, and nothing up ahead. Climbing up to the little drop-off proved to be difficult. Having one glow stick as my only light source added to the challenge, but once I was up top, I scrambled to catch up with B, and I was impressed with the speed of the ascent. I did not see or hear him until the small area before the drop. Uh, just as he reaches for the ooh, oh sorry, I skipped a line. Once I reached him to light safety, behind me was darkness, the fear of the unknown. I had a fleeting thought of a movie scene where the actor was outwitted by the monster. He had just reached the front door of the haunted house, and just as he turns the knob, he hears a sound behind him and turns only to see the monster. I slid the glow stick into the cord on my helmet and reached for my harness. That's when I thought, or then I thought I would let B get a little higher when I pulled the rope that was stretched down into the cave. That would make it easier to get up once we got to the top of the drop. I choose not to wind the rope around my arms since it was sore and bleeding, so I just pull into a pile on the floor. From above, I hear B warn me rock, and I ducked under the ledge for several small rocks landing on my feet. Um, quickly went back to pulling the rope. I had about 50 feet. Then the rope hit a snag. It was solid. There was no way I was going to crawl back in to release it, so I just decided to forget the rope and my harness and get the fuck out of the cave. It's the first time I've seen a swear word here, actually.
Language.
I quickly threw the harness down behind me and started to buckle it. Before I could secure it, I heard a strange noise at my feet. My pulse began to quicken. I looked down at the rope, only to discover my horror. The rope wasn't disappearing down in the darkness. Something was pulling it back into the cave. I let go of the harness and began crawling my way up the rope. For the unbuckled harness fell to the floor. Fortunately, I held on to the ascender. At the moment that I could not think straight, I began climbing the cave without being attached to the rope. I was climbing it as fast as my battered body could haul me up. I caught up to be on the ledge before our relay point was fixed. I told him to keep going, and it would only take a few minutes, but every second would be torture because I had to wait for him to get up. I watched the rope we just climbed. I expected to see some creature from the deep climb up to make me its lunch. The rope moved around a little bit in rhythm with B's climbing, but it did not appear to have any tension to it. As I stood there waiting for B, I kept watching for anything bizarre. As B reached the top of the last climb, I got ready to clip my ascender and get my sorry butt out of there. It was then that I noticed the rope began to tighten from below. I could feel the tension of the rope, but it was a steady tension, not like somebody was climbing. Either way, I wanted out of there as soon as possible. By the time I got to the entrance of the cave, to daylight, B was almost up where the rope was anchored. I wanted to get up so bad I started to free climb without clipping onto the rope. I could see B was almost up, so I clipped on and started up on my journey. I almost didn't make it. I had just started when I nearly collapsed from exhaustion. I managed to recover enough to pull myself up. The second I reached the top, I unclipped the ascender. I could see B kneeling down by the tree. I limped over to him and collapsed for the first time since I went through Floyd's tomb. His face was pale, almost white. His mouth and his eyes were wide open. He was breathing heavily, almost gasping. Overwhelmed with fright, B seemed transfixed on the knot, on the rope. Then in one motion, he produced a pocket knife and began to work on the rope. It is amazing how a person's state of mind can alter perception of time. I'm sure it only took 4 to 5 seconds to sever the rope from the tree, but it seemed like an hour. When the rope was cut, the knot fell to the ground while the end of the rope zipped across the rocks over the edge of the cliff and seeped, and the speed of it was causing a humming noise as it went. As soon as the rope was cut, B let out a cry. He dropped the knife and fell backwards. Watching the rope fly over the edge brought the feelings in the passage back to me. I got up and hunched towards the truck. I noticed B still laying there wide-eyed at the point the rope disappeared. I called to him, which seemed to break his trance. He got up and hurried away from the cave. Hurried away from the tree, the cave, the nightmare. Neither of us said a word all the way home. It is now 4 days after the trip to the cave. It has taken me 4 days and dozens of attempts to get this entire experience written in my journal. Every time I started to write, I recalled the terrible feelings that I couldn't write anymore. I felt compelled to continue as to document the unbelievable events and all the details were fresh in my mind. I still can feel the pain, still smell the stench, still experience the horror. Every Even typing from my journal is taking hours. I would like to write more, but it'll have to wait. Even now, with several days between me and the event, I can't relax. So that's all for now. And then this is our final update from March 19th of 2001. And it's this.
Yeah.
So like I said, he does like editor's notes basically.
Mm-hmm.
This is all an editor's note. So it's no
Okay.
longer any pictures or journal entries. He says, it's been 3 weeks since our last visit to the cave, and I want to update everyone to my condition, my plans for the cave, and the events of the past few weeks. Apologize for not returning your phone calls. I've been getting a lot of your messages, but I haven't really felt up to it. It really helped me just knowing that you dropped by, sis. I can hear the worry in your voice, but I'm okay. Don't worry about me. Just take care of those nieces and nephews of mine. If I figure I can get this site updated, I can let everyone know at once about what I'm doing. A lot has happened in the last 3 weeks. I'll do my best to cover everything. We left the cave and I was nearly in a state of shock. I could not think clearly and was having a difficult time trying to understand what had happened. I didn't eat much, nor did I get a lot of sleep. Even though it took 3 days to write my journal entries, when I finished writing my journal, I felt much better. I guess it was kind of therapeutic. B and I parted company after the trip, and I didn't see him again until yesterday. I didn't try to reach him. He didn't try to get a hold of me, nor did either of us try and contact Joe. B just dropped me off after the trip, and I spent the next several days by myself. As I mentioned, it helped me think a little bit clearer as I wrote, and I seemed to be a little calmer, but that didn't last. I went to work the next day and was sent home. The day after that, I had an overwhelming feeling of anxiety sink into my soul. I've been depressed and confused, and had no one I wanted to turn to for comfort. I continue in this miserable state, eating and sleeping whenever I can manage, until a week after the trip, things started to get strange. At first, I thought I was hearing sounds in the house with no explanation: footsteps, shuffling noises, creaking doors. You know, the typical horror movie stuff. But the only the sounds were very distinct, and sometimes not distinct at all. It was as though I wasn't sure I heard anything that I thought I heard. I would be eating or getting out of the shower and stop thinking I heard something, but the sound wouldn't repeat itself. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that it were happening frequently, I couldn't be sure that there were noises in the first place. I began seeing things in a manner similar to the sounds I was hearing, just glimpses of things out of the corner of my eye. Um, when I started to see things on a regular basis, I purchased a gun. I got it from an ad in the paper,
Oh
so
my
I didn't have to
gosh.
wait for a permit. I went to the doctor, but it didn't mention the details of my life. When I mentioned everything to him, I walked out of there with a prescription. Fortunately, my wounds and injuries are pretty much healed, so there were no questions asked. The flashes in the corner of my eye continued. They would be outside my windows, usually at night. I still couldn't make anything solid, so it was hard to pin down what was happening. Um, then I would get, oh, I would sleep in as long as I could, usually out of exhaustion. Then I would get cleaned up and try to eat something. I lost a lot of weight. I didn't watch much TV because I couldn't concentrate. Spent a lot of time on the internet doing a lot of research on caves and cave myths. The only story I could find was caver folklore about the Hodag. Hodag is supposedly a creature that roams caves. 2 weeks after we went into the cave, and a week after I began hearing things, I began to have nightmares, extremely lucid nightmares. Not specific theme or reoccurring events, just plain terrifying. Sometimes I was in my house and someone was trying to get me, only I couldn't run because I had no legs. Other times I was in a vat somewhere and someone was pouring a syrup like liquid on me, filling the vat. My dreams seemed so real, I had a hard time telling if I was awake or not. I was beat and drained from energy and spirit. I was going from the living room to my bedroom in the early evening. When I looked down the hall and saw a dark figure at the end, I thought it was a thief and began to back up slowly. It didn't move. As I was backing, the lights flickered on and off. Every muscle was tense. I stopped to stare at the figure, and then the phone rang. It startled me, so I stumbled over a chair, and when I got up and wheeled around to look at the hall, there was nothing. Um, when I arrived at a point of meet that a lot of time our friends would go to, I saw something that first startled me, but then caused me to be more relaxed than I had in a long time. Joe was there. He was out of his car and standing, looking at the lights. We looked at each other, and I could see from the tired look on his face that he had been going through the same thing that I had. You've been back, he began, even though he knew the answer. Yes, we need to return. Is tomorrow good? I asked. He said, yeah, noon. He got in his car and I got into mine, and I hadn't even wanted to talk to him about his experience. Obviously, he didn't want to know mine. I drove over to B's house. When he answered the door, I thought B actually looked like he was doing somewhat happy. One look at me and his disposition changed. Our conversation was also succinct. I ran into Joe, and we're going back tomorrow at noon. B looked dead serious. He just nodded his head. I asked him if I could spend the night at his house, and he let me in. I didn't notice until later, but every light in his house was turned on. He led me to his spare room and said, help yourself. I said, thanks. I washed up in the bathroom, took some medication, and got the first decent sleep in a long time. I promise you that if you haven't heard from me by now, you will very shortly. It's 10 a.m. on Saturday the 19th. We will be leaving for the cave in 2 hours. Preparing for this trip will be like no other trip I've been on before. For the first time in my life, I will carry a gun into the cave. I will also carry a knife, an extensive first aid kit, plenty of food and water, and a camera. There are so many things that I want to accomplish, so many answers I hope to find in this hidden passage. Reflecting on the events that led up to today leaves me feeling dizzy. Was this all a bad dream? Unfortunately, I am wide awake, and still, in a few short hours, I will face my nightmare. Who will enter the tomb first? Who will lead the way into the dark unknown? Who will decide when we turn back? Foremost amongst the questions in my mind, what about the video camera I left behind? Is it supposed to be able to record in complete darkness? I left the thing running, so we might find out on that tape. Darker questions follow. What if the camera's gone? What if it's destroyed? It would seem to me that crawling headfirst through a tight passage into darkness is an unnatural thing, just like crawling up the side of a cliff for recreation, or jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. I want to do that though. And floating to the ground. We do these things to satisfy our hunger for adventure, the subconscious desire to conquer our own little Everest. As B found a way of saying, caving is the last opportunity for exploration for the person with modest means. True. Just a short drive and just about anywhere in the country is a cave waiting to be explored. Even a cave well known among the general public can be approached by someone for the first time as an adventure. Something new, something to overcome, because it's there. Many of you don't agree with my decision to pursue this cave. I know from the messages I've received, and I'm afraid I don't have a choice. If I am ever to experience restful slumber, I must return. If I'm ever to walk the halls of my home in peace, I have to go back. If I'm ever to exit the overworld and enter the subterranean world of a cave, I must now return. I no longer fear that I have a choice. I must return. For my family and friends who are reading this, I say be at peace. I will conquer this cave, and then I will return and update this website immediately. I will include any photos we take in the cave today, and if you stop by the house, I will show you the video that I will have. I expect to be home later tonight or tomorrow at the latest. I will see you all soon with a lot of answers. Love, Ted. And that was the final update.
He's dead, bro.
He is fucking dead.
Yeah.
He's gone.
We don't even got the tape either.
I know.
Damn.
It's actually crazy. that shit is, I told you it was long. It is fucking long, but it's so
That's
good.
eons long.
I mean, it takes an hour and a half to get through all of it. Which means I will be foregoing my second one.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I think, unless we want to have a 4-hour podcast.
Yeah, it's gonna be rough.
Yeah, it is gonna be rough. But we could do a part 2.
True.
because the other one is
True. I could
shorter.
find another one too.
Hmm.
I got a twofer then, because I don't think the other one is gonna be as long. This drip 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 one is pretty quick.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we can throw both of yours and then I'll save mine for another time because it is a very, very classic one, so
Mm. All right, bet I'll have to do some digging because these are my two favorites, so I'll have to find another one that like
I
piques my
can
interest.
give you some suggestions that might spook you a little bit. But yeah, hit me. What you
Ooh.
got? What you got?
So this one was told to me. I gotta try and figure out how old I was. So I must have been fourth grade, fifth grade, maybe. No, fifth sounds too old, or probably 10 years old. And I was hanging out with like some older peeps because like we were the younger sisters of so it was like me and my friend and her older sister and their friends. So we were both 10, 11-ish, and they must have been early 20s, we'll say. So we're all hanging out, we're like just doing some girly pop talking, whatever, and then one of them was like, "Let's tell scary stories." And I was like, "Fuck." Okay, whatever. Like they don't normally get me, but like these girls are older, so then maybe they have like actual scary stuff that might be actually scary. So this one chick was like, "I know one. It's called Drip Drip Drip." And I was like, "Okay, drip drip drip, whatever." So we're all sitting, someone turned off, like dimmed the lights, and we're all just sitting like in a little circle. And she starts it off with, "A very young girl is home alone for the first time with only her dog for company. Listening to the news, she hears of a killer on the loose in her neighborhood. Terrified, she locks all the doors and windows, but she forgets about the basement window and it's left unlocked. She goes to bed, taking her dog with her and letting it sleep under her bed. That's where she normally likes to sleep. She wakes up in the middle of the night to hear a dripping sound coming from the bathroom. Drip, drip, drip. The dripping noise frightens her, but she's too scared to get out of bed and find out what it is. To reassure herself, she reaches her hand down towards the floor for the dog and is rewarded with a lick on her hand. The next morning, she goes to the bathroom for a drink of water, only to find her dead, mutilated dog hanging in the shower, his blood slowly dripping, spreading onto the tiles. Drip, drip, drip. On the shower wall, written in the dog's blood, are the words, "Humans can lick too."
No, what?
Dude,
I
it was
haven't. Wait,
so
okay.
fucked.
Wait, I definitely have not heard this one before. This does not sound familiar. What the fuck?
I hate it. I hate it. Little 10-year-old me was like, "Oh my god, the
No,
puppy."
no.
I hated
I need
it.
to go hug
And like
Nelson.
I do like telling like scary stories because like I like the storytelling aspect of like making
Yes.
your voice a little bit slower and like adding the bits. The bitch telling this story did such a good job. I left my friend's house, went home, nothing happened the first night. But the next night, I was like, dude, I can't sleep. This is so scary. I don't want. Why did she tell me that? Why didn't I be like, actually, I would like to leave. This is not for me. This would be scary. But I didn't want to be a pussy bitch in front of the older girls. I would be like, I want to be that cool chick. But no, it was scary. And now I
It is
still know it to this
scary.
day. That was 15 years ago.
Shit's still scary today. Okay, go on, go, 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 go
I
on, go
hate
on, go on.
it. But my next one, which I will be completely honest, is the Russian sleep experiment. And on God, the first time I read slash watched this shit, like the video for it, I thought it was real.
I whole ass convinced my cousin it was real. I, to this day, so I named the fucking little thing that it gave the picture of, I named it Russo. And I freak
Yeah.
him out because all the time I'll be like, oh, did you hear Russo in your car? He said, and I just freak him out with it.
Dude, it's such a good
It
storytelling.
is. It
And
is.
then I don't even know how I found out it was fake, but
I
oh, it was
don't.
on TikTok. So I must have listened to the YouTube video and Reddit post so many years ago. So
Hmm.
then when it reached TikTok and they did like the pictures and like the AI storytelling guy, I was like, yes, I get to save this. It's my favorite one.
Hmm.
And naturally, I go to the comments and they say, oh, wish this was real. It's fake. It's fake.
Yeah.
Did anybody else know this was
Yeah.
creepypasta from Reddit? And I was like, dude,
Yeah. You said damn. All of the hype
why'd
I
you
had
guys do
about
that to
this
me?
creepy ass story is just gone.
I know. I still like it, but I'm
Yeah, me
just like,
too.
oh,
All
I don't know
right.
if that's more fucked up of me for wanting it to be real
I
because of what happens like I'm
I
about
I
to
have
read,
gone
or
through the same thought where I'm like, am I fucked up because I thought this would be really cool history?
yeah. Okay, glad we're on the same page. Good, good, good. Okay, so it starts off with giving you a quick summary and jumping into the nitty-gritty. So, Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment and carefully monitored their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them. Since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and 5-inch glass porthole sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on, no bedding, just cots, as well as running water, a toilet, enough dried food to last all 5 for a month. So well over the extended thought of 15 days. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised, air quotes on that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep at the 30 days, which, again, that was a lie. They just meant
Hmm.
15, but I guess they all, quote unquote, willingly agreed for the 30-day test trial. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past. General tone of the conversations took a darker aspect after the 4th day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about circumstances and events that led them to where they were and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other altogether and began alternately whispering into the microphones, which is
I
weird,
know.
and peering into the one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think that they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects in captivity with them, which was, I don't know, they all heard everything, so whatever. At first, the
Mm-mm.
researchers suspected this was just an effect of the gas, so they overlooked it. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber repeatedly, yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. At which point, he continued to attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords and was unable to make any more sounds. The most surprising thing about this behavior was how the other captives reacted to it, or rather, didn't. They continued whispering into the microphones until the second other captives started to scream. The two non screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the portholes. Their screaming promptly stopped, and so did the whispering. After 3 more days have passed, researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they're still working, since they thought it was impossible that no sound could be occurring with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. There was nothing wrong. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. Okay. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke a response from the people they were afraid of being dead or just full on vegetables and laying on the ground. They announced, "We're opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor, or you will be shot on sight. Compliance will earn you an immediate freedom. Please back away." To their surprise, they heard a calm voice that responded with a single phrase: "We no longer want to be freed." Debate
Mm.
broke out among the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more responses using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. A day later, the chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, full on oxygen. And immediately, voices from the microphones began to object. Three different voices began begging, pleading for the life of their loved ones to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and soldiers were sent in to receive the test subjects. They began to scream louder and louder and louder. The soldiers didn't even want to look at what was still inside this room. Four of the five subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state of life they were in. The food rations past day five had not been touched at all. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chests stuffed into the drain in the center of the
Oh,
chamber, blocking it and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was not really determined. All four quote unquote surviving subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their flesh. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that these wounds were inflicted by hand, not with their teeth, and it might have also been self inflicted. Closer examination of the wounds later, once they got the subjects out, did confirm that they were self inflicted, unfortunately. The abdominal organs below the rib cage of all four subjects had been removed. While the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place, the skin and most of the muscle attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact, but had been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all four had been seen to be working and digesting food, it quickly becoming apparent that they were digesting their own flesh that they had ripped off and been eaten over the past couple days since day five. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to even go near the chamber. The subjects themselves continued to scream to be left in the chamber and begged to demand that the gas be turned back on, and they can't fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of removing them. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out, and
oh,
another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by the subject's teeth.
I forgot how like
Another five of the soldiers. What?
I forgot how like gruesome it gets.
Brutal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, this shit's disgusting. And it's even worse because five of the other soldiers lost their lives because they committed suicide after seeing what they saw.
Yeah.
I don't remember that part at all, but I'm not shocked.
Yeah.
Ugh.
That would be
Um,
rough to
oh, in
witness.
the struggle, one of the four quote unquote living subjects, obviously, to like try to get your mental fixed after seeing that, yeah, that's horrible. Blech. And imagine like the smell, because they smeared like their
Mhm.
poop on the what do they call it, portholes, and then the blood and water, and that must have leaked out from the door, so it's now
Yeah.
in the halls. Oh, I don't even want to think about it.
Ah, yeah,
Oh,
it's too gross to
gross.
think about.
So one of the four living subjects bled out because during the like fight to stay in the room, his spleen ruptured and he just bled out. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. The injection, whoa, he was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one of the doctors. His heart had been was seen to beat for 2 full minutes after he had bled out to the point where there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes,
Mm-mm.
struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word more, more, more over and over until he finally fell silent.
Mm.
No. The surviving three test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the two with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas and demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the three was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs put back into his body,
Mm.
it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative they have been giving. they had given him to prepare him for surgery. He fought furiously against the restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through the 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even though the weight of a 200-pound soldier was also holding that wrist down. It took only a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered shut, his heart stopped.
Mm.
An autopsy was done on that test subject that died on the operating table, and it was found that his blood had triple the amount of normal oxygen levels. The muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle. Most of them were from the force of his own muscles exerting on them. So, like, fighting against it, his own, like, muscles snapped his bones.
Right.
How do you even do that?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. The second survivor that had been in the first group of the 5 to start screaming, his vocal cords destroyed. He was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought out. He shook his head yes when someone suggested reluctantly they should try surgery without anesthetic, and he did not react for the full 6-hour procedure when they're putting his organs back into his abdominal region. The
S-
surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should not be medically possible for this patient to be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers.
Mm.
Ugh. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began wheezing loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and paper and fetched it for him to write on, and it was simple writings of "keep cutting."
Nope.
The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without an anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected with a paralytic to make them stop struggling as much. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients were laughing continuously. Once paralyzed, they could only follow the attended researchers with their eyes. They cleared the system of any abnormalities of the short period of time when they were out, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they ripped out their own guts, why they wanted to get the gas, why they were fighting the anesthetic so hard. The only response that they were given was, "I must remain awake." All
Mm.
3 test subjects restraints were reinforced and they were placed back in the chamber, awaiting for determination as to what to do with them. The researchers facing the wrath of the military quote unquote benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considering euthanizing their surviving subjects. The commanding officer, an ex KGB, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they put the gas back on. The researchers strongly objective, but obviously were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were getting the gas back on. It was obvious that at this point, all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might, first left, then right, then left, trying to kick out. The remaining subject was holding his head off the pillow and blinking rapidly, having been the first to be wired with the EEG. They were monitoring his brainwaves in quite surprise. They were normal for the most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as though he were repeatedly suffering from brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on papers scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw the man's eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of a deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped.
Mm.
The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed some flat lines as the one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as the three researchers. One of them named one of the named three immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between his eyes, then turned his gun to the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subjects, still restrained to the bed, as the remaining members of the medical staff fled the room. I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you. Not with them. He screamed at the man strapped to the table. What are you? What are you? I must know. The subject smiled. Have you forgotten so easily? The subject asked. We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go into the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread. The researcher paused and aimed the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out, so nearly free.
Oof. It's so
And that's
fucking
the end.
creepy. I know. It's just, oh my,
But it's so
I know.
good.
Do you ever think about like the people who write these? Because I know they're fictional stories. That's what creepypastas are. But like the
Oh
people
yeah.
who write these are so talented because I like
In a fucked up way.
yes, I read so many novels and none of them elicit responses, but I also do think a factor of that is like they're presented as though they're real. You know, like you pick up
The
a
copy pastas?
yeah, like creepypastas are
Yeah.
presented in a way where like you're meant to think that they're real. That's why you didn't know that the Russian sleep experiment wasn't real, or I didn't know that the other story that I was going to do was fake until they made a video game about it. And I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
wait, crazy. This is based off a real thing. Looked it up. Not real.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it also came from a time where, like, remember the chainmail stuff? Like, send this to 6 people, or the little girl
Oh
from
yeah,
the
yeah,
story
yeah.
is going
Send
to
this
come
six
get
people or
you.
you're gonna get cursed.
Yeah.
Or the KGB is gonna come after you.
Yeah, right. Though that was
Yeah,
always
shit
a
like
fun
that.
one. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like it came from a time where all of that was like really popular. So like I think when I was younger I just enjoyed being scared, so I let myself believe it was true.
Yeah, I really did enjoy and I know this is I think more leaning towards true, but like when we used to talk about listening to corpse husbands like scary
Yeah.
stories, like I know those were submitted to him or some were just blatant stories cuz he would say before each one. But like those would be like my ASMR nights where I would just leave it up and they would like give me the chills, but I knew like that I was okay, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just loved it. I don't know, it's that like it's fun to be scared kind of thing, but like I don't think no, there was at least two of the ones that I remember from Corpse where they genuinely were like, "Ooh, I don't like
Hmm.
it."
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that was so well
I
done.
remember being really into like when I started getting really into YouTube, that was one of the things that I did the most was I listened to like Mr. Creepypasta or,
Mhm.
Corpse or any of those channels that would just tell scary stories because oftentimes it was coming from somebody who loved to do storytelling, so it was highly
Yeah.
irritating.
I love that though. Like I wish more people were able to like be able to write freely like that and then just get a lot of like hype about it. I'm
Yeah,
not a big Reddit girly, so I don't know how often that happens there,
a
but
lot. There's there's a really great like few channels that just pull stories off of r/no sleep
mm,
or I r/ the truth is here has kind of fallen off because it used to be kind of like a more intense r slash no sleep where things were more truthful. So like stories would
Mm-hmm.
be exaggerated, but that's where you saw a lot of like your ghostly horror stuff or your supernatural horror
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
And it would be people sharing their experiences. Now they've got some stuff that slips in that I don't really fuck with, but like
Mm-hmm.
mostly it's still an entertaining subreddit. But no sleep will always be good because it's just scary stories over and over again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think there's like the aspect of like there's some nights where I like to read them, or there's aspects where like I want like it told to me like a podcast or
Yeah,
like how Corpse reads it off.
yeah. I think now I much more enjoy like the audio experience of like scary stories.
Yeah.
But like I do love reading them as well. And it's like I love the formats people come out with. So like everything that I was reading, and I'll post the link to the site in on topic so you guys can see it. But like it is just a very simple, outdated website. That's such a cool way to tell a scary story. Like make a
Mm.
whole website for it and make it this like immersive experience where you're reading this guy's blog that randomly stopped after he decided to go explore this fucking creepy ass haunted cave. Um
Mm-hmm.
and I think the formats of the scary stories are what make me want to read them, but if it's just a scary story, I'd rather listen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I like
Cuz
to, I don't know. Recently I've been really liking I don't know what it's called. Just like Audible
yeah.
stories instead of reading them. Because
Yeah.
I like doing things while I'm listening to them.
Yeah, exactly. And like I do this a lot at work where there are podcasts out there that do scary stories, right? So I'll throw a podcast in and I'll just listen to scary stories while I do paperwork. And it's based. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or I can't
Sometimes if I'm like not working with other peeps and like I'm like okay to like block out some sound, I just throw my headphones on, pick like Crime Junkie or some shit like that, or like one
Mhm.
that I know it's on like Spotify, and I just tune everything out.
Yeah. There was a podcast I was listening to so for anybody who knows me, this isn't going to come as a shock, but I am super the Northern Lights are out right now. Oh
Ooh.
my god, I'm gonna go look at those immediately after this. But there's a podcast that I listen to. My Ring doorbell app told me that, by the way. The there it's called Darknet Diaries. It's all dark web stories,
hmm
and it's a fun listen. But it's also very heavy because the dark web is something that absolutely exists and terrible things happen on all the
And
time.
it's scary.
It
Those stories
is,
are good though.
but that's why I like it because it's the one thing that still scares me. And
The dark
like,
web.
yes, the dark web terrifies me, which is why I want to know like everything about it because
Yeah.
like we have that thing where the things that are make us afraid are also the things that fascinate us the most.
That's
So
so messed
yeah,
up.
I listen to a lot of like dark web stories. That would be a cool topic to go over one day, but like I wouldn't want to make you look into it because it is really scary.
I've done a little bit. I haven't done too extensive, but I have looked into it as well.
Yeah, dark web true crime is a really interesting niche of things, and once you get into like black hat and white hat hacking, it gets a little like scary and cool because like white hats for the government are like the craziest people I think I've ever heard of in my life. Um, but then you have their opposing side, which is anonymous, like black hat hackers that can get into the government, and it's like shit just gets really scary. And then you like hear stories off of like the Silk Road. Like I had a buddy who bought his ADD medication off of a website on the dark web because it was cheaper because he didn't have insurance, and dude tried to sell him harder drugs and he said no, and then dude sent him his address even though he got everything shipped to a PO box.
That's insane.
That is terrifying.
No, thank you.
Yep. Yeah. So I've just decided I'll never go on it. I will never download The Onion or Tor or whatever they have. Like, there's like 3 different browsers that you can get around to get onto the deep web. I'll never have them. I don't care for
Hmm.
them. I don't want anything to do with it. But the stories, let me hear them.
Yeah. The
Yeah, yeah.
stories tell me all about it.
There
But
are, yeah.
personal preferences or personal interactions with
Mm-hmm.
it, no.
Yeah. There are also like there are stories that I have to skip because like anything with trafficking, I refuse to listen to. I refuse to give that attention. But like
Yeah.
the like creepy stories inspired by the dark web or like the light crime that I like hacking and stuff like that, I think it's really
Hmm.
interesting. Anything further than that, very questionable. I don't know if I want to
Hmm.
I don't know if I want to acknowledge that it's real.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to open that door, bro.
Yeah, I
I don't
don't think
know.
that's probably a line I don't think I'll cross.
Yeah.
Oh, but I hope you guys enjoyed our scary stories.
Hmm.
I think eventually down the road sometime we'll probably do a part 2 because I love scary stories. It might not be creepypastas, but I would just be down for scary stories in general. Even if we did
Hmm.
like if we found a whole bunch of the what is it, like 2 sentence horror stories.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
spun it out of proportion. I'd be
Yeah,
down.
that would be so fun. Um,
Yeah. Oh, maybe we can do like book talk girly type shit where like
I would love
they're like, because
that.
there's 2 sentence horror stories, but there's like what would be the same sentence that begins and ends your story, stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh my God, wait, that would be so fun. You know what we could also do is we could do an episode where you guys are now seeing the behind the scenes of what happens after podcasts.
Literally, as soon
Um
as she says goodbye, we hang
this
up
is
and this
what
is what
happens.
happens.
But we could do a thing where we create a character and then we're like, okay, what are the sentences to start and end their story? Like we can workshop a character or two.
Ooh,
That could
like
be so
D&D that
fun.
shit.
Yeah, like
Okay.
yeah, that would actually be kind of fun.
All right, well, you guys already know that there's going to be some book talk shit coming up
Yeah.
soon. But in regards to next episode, it's going to be the week of Thanksgiving. So we're going to go ahead. I think that one might be a quickie.
Yeah.
So it'll probably just be like a yo, what's going on in the lives of Jay and
Yeah.
Veda? We'll see how that's going. And just probably just girl talk it
Yeah,
out.
quick yap yap.
Yeah,
And
quick
then
yap sesh. This will probably be applicable to when we also do this episode of Christmas week as well. Let me look ahead and see when that falls,
I
actually.
actually will be out of town for Christmas, so we might skip that one altogether or maybe
All
do
right.
a double header where we do the
Ooh,
week
yikes.
after or before or something, but
Yeah, because it's
that's
gonna
all.
fall on the 9th and the 23rd, so we might
Yeah.
just do the 9th and then the 30th.
Yeah, that's what I would
And
and
push it
then
3 weeks on that next one, because falling that week, like 2 days before Christmas, I don't think I'm gonna be free.
yeah, I don't think that week I'm going down south. I'm visiting my parents, so I
Yeah.
won't be available at all. And so we'll probably push it to that next week, do like a year recap. And
Yeah.
then
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
fun. Okay.
yeah, and then we'll start fresh for you guys. That or I mean, we'll probably talk about it cuz last year I know we ended the week of Christmas and then we
Yeah.
started back up the next year. But this would put you guys at almost a month without a podcast. So we'll talk
Yeah.
about it. We'll figure out what we're going to do and we'll let you
Yeah, we'll
guys
keep
know.
you guys in the know,
You
of
guys know we'll
course.
keep you updated.
And with that, Cubbies, keep it real,
But
but
keep it
keep it
curious.
curious. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I'm looking at the ground, but Wishing that you make up your mind.